Good Lord.
Yeah! Hello again, friends, and you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. Jesus, I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and here's the man who will lead us through the promised land here today. The leader of the cult of Cornette, the yelling stops now, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Whatever you say, just don't hurt me. For God's sake, you came through the screen about to snatch me by the goozle pipe and squeeze my britches full. You were so proud of yourself for not hitting the one ear-piercing, shrill note that always sends a dagger into the listeners' hearts and minds. You sounded like a chipmunk on amphetamine, just running all over.
That's kind of my sound.
What in the?
That's kind of my
has
sound.
happened?
You know,
Are you all right?
I've been listening to a lot of Commander Cody. So I decided I'd play a little Boogie Woogie. And then I realized I can't play Boogie Woogie, so it happened like that.
You're one of the airmen that's circling the lost planet right now, I have a feeling. You know, that's who they ought to have put together. In AEW, while Cody Rhodes was still there, they ought to have teamed him up with Commander, and they could have called him Commander Cody.
I like it.
We're narrow casting now. Does anybody even know what the fuck we're talking about?
Commander Cody, obviously not his real name, he had kind of a stoner, not rockabilly, but stoner.
He was stoned, is what you're saying.
Boogie Woogie kind of rock and roll thing.
Boogie Woogie dance hall material.
There's amazing footage available of him on Letterman. Like in the early days of Late Night with David Letterman, where he does a song. One of the songs was, "We're drinking, we're nuts." That was like the chorus over and over again. But he does interviews, and he's just such a character that you can understand why he had such a devoted following amongst the people who were into that kind of scene.
And the Lost Planet Airmen who were there to cheer him on.
And it's from the old serial, Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen. You know, the Rocketeer later was like.
And you don't mean cereal like you pour milk over in a bowl in the mornings. You're talking about them because remember, Brian, some of our listeners aren't 80 or 90 years old or are versed in the pop culture as we are, and they don't know what the fucking movie cereal, The Perils of Pauline. Where do you think they got the idea to tie people to the railroad tracks?
It invented episodic TV before there was a thing called TV.
Yes, it was just episodic. Oh, and then along came John. All right. Anyway, before we go anywhere today, I got to do this. I've been meaning to mention on any of our programs here for the past few weeks, the new book that Sean Delaney put out on Evansville, Indiana wrestling history. And things just keep popping up. And he's like the last guest on the 90-minute version of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He kept getting bumped. Golly, we don't have time for Sean if he'll come back tomorrow. But I must mention that he has, and you have seen this as well, done the history of professional wrestling in Evansville, Indiana for 1972 and 1973. And he's expanded his coverage because as it gets into the golden years of the Goulas Welch office, etc., he's comparing the cards in Evansville with the cards in Louisville. Louisville was on Tuesdays most of the time, Evansville on Wednesdays most of the time. Both towns had been opened up by Jerry Jarrett and Christine Jarrett, Jerry's mother, Teenie, was the promoter for the towns. And so he's comparing the Evansville cards with the Louisville cards. And then also the Goulas Welch office was running Owensboro, Kentucky in some periods on a weekly basis on Monday nights as a sea town, because Monday night was already Birmingham, Alabama, and Memphis, Tennessee. So, but there was still a live event in Owensboro every week. And Phil Golden's All-Star Wrestling that we've talked about in the past that was about to start running opposition during this period to Jarrett in Louisville and other places, they had broken off from Gulas Welch because Phil Golden was originally Nick and Roy's promoter in Paducah and had broken off and took the town and was running his own show there. So, and this was also a period of time, if you want to go even further, where Lexington, Kentucky, not the big Rupp Arena shows that would come later in the 70s, but just shows at the local, I think it was the Lexington, it was either Henry Clay High School or Catholic High School gym. And they were on Thursday nights. So between Monday and Fridays, if you wanted to start in Lexington, Kentucky, and drive 300 miles south, you could see, or 300 miles west, you could see 5 live shows of wrestling per week. So that's over 200 per year in just that little stretch of geography. Brian, have I lost you on the wherewithal and the locations of these things?
I mean, in terms of the actual locations, maybe a little bit, but I have a general idea of the area, specifically from being a wrestling fan. A lot of my early geography knowledge came specifically from professional wrestling.
Well, but that's the thing, is that he's done a great job here of pointing out not only the cards, but the differences. As I mentioned, Evansville in those days was a sea town because the entire Gulas Welch empire, Birmingham and Memphis, where Memphis was Roy's pet town and Birmingham was Nick's pet town. And they, on Wednesday nights, they also ran Nashville. So Evansville was fighting Nashville at the time, and they also had Bowling Green, Kentucky as a weekly town. And Jackson, Tennessee, for a lot of this period of time, ran on Wednesday nights. So it was just a ridiculous number of live events that they ran, and that's why they had incredible numbers of different wrestlers in the territory at any one time, because they had to put on 2, 3, sometimes 4 shows a night. But with Louisville, since it popped and it was a money town, Louisville got more attention, whereas in the early days, Evansville, that's why Jarrett pressed into the service some of Bruiser's talent, because since he, as we've talked about, got strong-armed into paying Bruiser and Snyder when he opened up Louisville and Evansville because they claimed that they were their towns, he would get some of their underneath guys to come and fill out the cards, and you'd see odd matchups of guys from 2 different territories facing each other. But besides the business, which I'll come back to that in a second, the business aspect of the number of shows and the number of wrestlers, he's also uncovered with the Paducah Phil Golden events, because we've talked about Angelo Poffo was involved with the Golden promotion and later on put some money in it. And these are the same towns that he and his sons, Randy and Lanny, would open up when they started ICW wrestling several years later. Angelo was, which Angelo was backing at that point, Angelo was fixated on the idea of running this loop of towns. But during and Brian, you said, what is it, the 1973 baseball preseason or whatever it was, that's training? This is where Savage was wrestling his first matches. What was the baseball situation at that point?
Well, there was a holdout. There was that was when there was a big thing and spring training was delayed. Remember, we had a Guest the Program show from Racine where there was a masked wrestler in the main event with Angelo Poffo in a tag match. And based on the pictures, seeing the physique, it looked to be a young Randy Savage, because I've kind of seen other pictures of him. His physique stands out. Because he was skinny, he was slim. Just whatever, it looked like Randy Savage.
Right. And in this case, some of the Phil Golden shows that were running around this period of time, because Savage was still trying to make it in baseball, and he didn't want anybody to know, any of the baseball people to know, that he was starting to break into wrestling, but he worked without a mask under the name Jim Pride. And he was jerking the curtain on some of the Golden shows at that point. So as baseball was getting screwier, he was starting his next career there. And anyway, it's fascinating. The history of professional wrestling in Evansville, Indiana, 72 and 73. It also has, as I mentioned, the Louisville Cards, Owensboro, Paducah, backstage stories or behind the scenes stories, rather, on the different promotional changes and things that were in the newspaper at the time. But think about this, Brian, again, for the people who say wrestling is so much more popular now, and well, you just hear about it more. They were running Memphis, Tennessee in 72 and 73 on Monday nights. That's the period of time where Jackie Fargo and Al Green had the first Coliseum sellout. And then in 73, it was Lawler and White as a tag team with Sam Bass against Tojo and Jarrett and Fargo, those guys that were setting the attendance records, where they sold out one week and came back and sold out the next week, 11,000 plus. They're also running Birmingham on Monday nights from the Goulas office. Jarrett booked Memphis, as we've said, and Goulas's booker, Lynn Rossi, usually booked Birmingham. They do 3,000 people a week or better in those days, and 6,000 seat sellouts were not uncommon. And that's why that Birmingham was always looked at more fondly on Monday nights than Memphis, until Jarrett took over, moved to the Coliseum, and started outdrawing it. And then they've got a spot show in Owensboro. Did they draw 500 people? What the fuck? There was only 6 guys and a referee on the card. So then on Tuesdays, they'd be in Louisville and draw, in those days, the weekly average was hitting around 4,000 people. And they'd also have another town on Tuesday and Wednesday in Nashville. That was some of the glory years. They were doing 3,000 plus people a week at the fairgrounds. But also Evansville, from newspaper accounts, 1,200 to 1,400 people is the average, says the Coliseum manager. And then another, Jackson, Tennessee, where maybe they had 1,000 people. And then again, Thursday nights, they had 2 or 3 towns. We're not even taking into account Chattanooga on Saturdays, that would regularly do 3,000 or 4,000 people, and sometimes the bigger crowds for sellouts. So in these same towns all over the territory, they were selling, 30,000, 40,000 tickets or more on any given week. And then you hit the hot points in 74, Memphis alone sold 400,000 tickets. Everybody in these towns knew what the fuck was happening with the wrestling.
Well, like you said, the book, The History of Professional Wrestling in Evansville, Indiana by Sean Delaney. This is book 6 in his series of books. And Sean, I give you some credit, and thank you for sending over a copy. Very nice handwriting.
Oh, and he also found Savage worked as the Graduate. Wonder what
that makes sense.
Prompted that. Angelo Poffo, one of his gimmicks was, which Lanny kind of offshot later on as the Genius, but it was Poffo and Chris Markoff were the Graduates, right? With the
That's right.
mortar boards and the robes and etc. And Angelo would do his promo where he used big words and would be smarter than everybody.
And Lanny took that gimmick and turned it into a fey poet later on. But no, I give Sean credit too. The book, it sounds like a little thing, but a lot of people put out wrestling history books and the font is off, or it's too light and you can't read it. The reprints are useless. Makes you wonder what they were thinking. This looks good. He did a good job with this. So, once again, History of Professional Wrestling in Evansville, Indiana. It's available on Amazon. And Jim, on that topic, real quick, another book from a series of books we plugged in the past. The latest book from New England wrestling promoter Sheldon Goldberg is out. The Warmth of the Sun, the final sequel from the series of books that Sheldon has put out. This is Wrestling Fiction. And again, we've plugged it in the past, so those of you who got turned on to it and checked it out, the final book is out, The Warmth of the Sun.
Which, and that's a play on words, because it's the sun. See, this is a fictional wrestling promotion and all the backstage maneuvering and wrangling, and it's the son of the guy that was so The Warmth of the Sun is because Sheldon is a very, very well-read and literate fellow, and often has these double entendres. He's the Stephen King of wrestling.
You know what's weird? He has his bio here on the back, and it brings up all of his actual accolades. No mention of Matt Marketplace, the fine newsletter he published in the 90s, which for a lot of people was actually kind of a inroad to find where cool wrestling memorabilia was, or rare items that weren't around. It was it was very much of its time, but it was an important newsletter, especially for collectors.
And then everybody started figuring anything with the word wrestling on it is valuable, and they go on eBay and try to sell you a chewed up Tito Santana trading card from 1986 for $500.
We've lowered it to $400, but let us know if you are interested. But once again, check out these books. They're available on Amazon. And thank you to the authors for sending over copies. Oh boy, we got a lot to cover here today. And of course, Jim, there are lots of other great wrestling books and other great wrestling memorabilia and merchandise available right now at JimCornette.com.
Literally so many that we can't plug them all in the same breath, so we will just say that it's books, it's DVDs, it's pictures, it's autographs, it's action figures, it's T-shirts you can cover your body up in. It's all kinds of things at JimCornette.com. And next month will come the news on a fascinating and wonderful thing that we're going to have on sale for our Christmas season, along with many other surprises. JimCornette.com.
A fascinating and wonderful thing. You're really building this up. I can't wait to see what this is.
It's fascinating and wonderful, baby.
All right. Bill Apter in a box coming to you very soon. Jim, why don't we move on here with
Sounds
the
like
show?
A Saturday Night Live sketch that they left on the cutting room floor.
We have a lot to get to here today, and we have a lot of things to follow up on. For instance, Unreal. We have the 1994 list to return to, and lots of other things, but why don't we start with the main event here today? A big AEW pay-per-view event from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. AEW Redemption, where the original plan was for Kenny Omega to redeem himself by winning the world title at this pay-per-view, but change of plans. No one redeemed themselves on this pay-per-view, but there were highlights and lowlights, and in this case, barking like a dog. Let's talk about AEW Redemption.
Boy, howdy. Well, I didn't watch the pre-show, shockingly enough, because the rest of the show was, the real show was enough show for me. But do you want to talk about the barking like a dog at the beginning before we just move on any further? Because I don't know where it came up in the show. Forgive me, I'm an old man. I don't have much longer left to live. Whenever a match is over with, I'm going to fast forward 5 minutes, see if I can skip these entrances. I've seen them walk, right? So I missed the backstage pre-tape with Mick Foley and Megan Brain and her partner, the giant, I don't know, Plowgirl Frazier. I don't know what her fucking name is. But we talked about this, Brian, the other day on the show about Mick Foley, even if he's not going to be wrestling, is still a megastar in the wrestling world. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows his name. Everybody, they used to all love him. Although after appearances like these, I'm not sure. But the thing is, why use him to interview mid-card talent when you could maximize, having a guy of that stature on your show? And here he was again doing a backstage pre-taped interview, interviewing the girls' tag team. And obviously he was wholeheartedly in favor of this and wanting to do this. Which is sometimes, I can take from experience, you need to save Mick from himself. if he's not trying to fling himself off something, then he's being too nice. He's trying in some fashion to get these girls over or to just get them noticed or to himself to fit in this crazy program. I don't know what he's doing, but the point is they're out there and they have memorized. It would have been more emotional if they'd have read it off a teleprompter, because they've memorized this dissertation they're going to give where the one girl talks and Mick says something and the other girl talks, and Mick at least put some feeling into it. The other ones are just robots. But then they've already put him in a chair. Have a seat. Hopefully that's not a shoot, that he can actually stand for a 2-minute interview. But he's sitting in a chair and they're giants anyway. Okay, that's fine. But then they tell him to bow down to them. And I guess they put him in the chair because maybe he can't get down on his knees these days. I know how that feels. But he started barking. Instead of bowing down, he bow-wowed and started barking like a dog. Bow wow, ruff, 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 ruff. He was, and it went on. And they were just standing there looking at him, and he's barking and roughing. And then he actually said, well, guys, back to you, because this is going nowhere for me. And it went on the internet, apparently. And it trended on Twitter. And the people are like, what the fuck, Mick? What has happened? This is Mick Foley? One guy said he looked like Captain Lou Albano. But I don't.
Well, and some of the feedback we saw, and I don't agree with it, was look at what AEW has done to Mick Foley. Look what Tony Khan has done to Mick Foley. This isn't a Tony Khan idea. This was suicide on the air, not homicide. This was Mick Foley. Mick Foley wanted to do this. And again, the bad joke that I'm sure in his head would have played out better. I don't know how. I don't know what this did to help these girls. But the joke of bow down, meaning bark like a dog.
Bow wow.
It's the stupidest thing ever. And it was really awkward. Slightly creepy.
Cringy is the kid's word, right?
And again, if the idea is we're going to use Mick Foley's star power to host a pre-show with Jeff Jarrett and Renee, and then interview people coming up to help them, this doesn't help them. The story coming out of this wasn't Megan Bain and Lena Cross did a great promo, or they look great, or they were imposing, or wait until we see them against the Brawling Birds. It was Mick Foley's a bit of a perv, or, whatever people thought. That was the story. It did nothing to help the girls, did it?
Well, I mean, look at the comments on Twitter. A legend who has given it all for our entertainment, diving off cells, taking crazy bumps, has been reduced to barking. Mick fucking Foley. No, to me, that was a bit weird. It's weird. Foley cut ties with WWE due to politics, but then goes to AEW to do trashy, tasteless things. That seems like a segment written by Epstein for Trump. Apparently, the United Kingdom chipping in. I'll say, Foley, what the fuck are you doing, son? You're making a tit out of yourself, which. That's why I have a feeling he's from the United Kingdom.
I see a bunch of things here. This is what AEW has turned Mick Foley into. I see they've given Mick Foley creative control. Is Mick Foley okay? And no one seems to...
How about, would I like either one of them to sit on my face? Sure. Should Foley get paid untold money and bark like a dog and do it on TV? Not so sure.
I don't know. And this comes on the heels of that Willow Tekla segment that he was in the middle of. Maybe no more segments with Mick and the women for a while. How about if Mick Foley's going to be brought to Montreal for a pay-per-view? Introducing him to the crowd, have him wave and leave is better than have him do backstage interviews that are bad comedy. Like, Vince would have rejected this.
Oh,
like,
my
this
God.
was Mick Foley. This wasn't Tony. This was
hey, now, he wasn't opposed to bark like a dog for me, but he would have had it the other way around and had one of the fucking underneath girls barking for the top star. But it's still, it's
for himself.
For him, yeah.
Well, again,
but it's just sad at this point. What the fuck? He's trying to be nice to these people, but somebody needs to save him from himself before he's meaningless.
You know, I said it to the other day, and I know Mick Foley's a kind-hearted man who likes to laugh. But we haven't seen serious Mick Foley on wrestling TV in forever. Because even like every now and then he would come back as Cactus Jack after, like, 99, 2000, or whenever he would have one of his comebacks, there was always just bad jokes, bad puns, weird Santa shit. Just, there was always other things around it, not just like, wow, this guy seemed like he can really kick some ass. Like, after a certain time, the story was just how much punishment he could take, not like the way it was kind of in the 90s. Like, I hate to say a modern Bruiser Brody, but it was kind of like, he's going to go and he's going to cause a fight. There's going to be a wild fight.
Yeah.
He's tough.
It's not just we're going to watch someone fling him off objects and precipices. It was this guy's going to kill somebody. And then it just became beat that carcass.
Now he interviews the heel stable, making the center of the promo his socks. And then this. I don't know what they're doing. If you have Mick Foley, there's got to be... When was the last time he was in Montreal? Big star of the Attitude Era. When was he there last? I don't even know. There had to be more to... There had to be a better way to use him than this. But it's Tony's money.
Well, and it's Tony's time. And I started to say I didn't watch the pre-show. That interview where Mick was barking was on the main show, but... I understand they had matches on the pre-show, Brian. I don't have them in front of me. Does anybody care?
When we report on
I'll take that as a no.
When we report on the star ratings, we'll talk about what the matches were. I did not watch the pre-show this time, except for like the last 5 minutes or so, which were all introductions for the match that was going to be the first match on the pay-per-view.
That's the point. They had a 1 hour pre-show followed by a 4 hour and 54 minute pay-per-view. But at least they saved us about 10 minutes on pay-per-view because they brought the guys to the first match or in the first match to the ring during the pre-show, which was a 6-man ladder match where the winner of this will face the winner of the international title match later on tonight that they're going to have between. Who was that? Who had the international title, not the continental title or TNT title? Kyle. Yes. So the winner of this gets Kyle. And it was Commander, he's back. El Clown, he's back. Hong Kong Phooey, who's from Montreal. That proves the French Canadians will cheer for the garbage truck driver if he's from French Canada. Because they loved Bailey there. Have you ever been to French Canada?
I love Montreal. I think Montreal's a fucking fun city.
It gave me a headache trying to drive around because all the signs are in French. Do we go Nord or do we go Sud?
You go to Rue de Saint Laurent. Plan to have a good time.
Well, I went to Rue today. And I certainly did. So it was Commander and El Clown, Hong Kong Phooey. Nick Wayne is back, but his mother and her large upper frontal protuberances were not. Jungle Jackoff, he's in this, and Rigor Mortis. And I thought that this would be, since they've just been announcing that they've re-signed Perry and that, he's coming back and blah, blah, blah. I thought, well, he'll win. right? Oh no, I forgot. Tony considers hometown over money drawing potential and or perception. But nevertheless, I've come to the idea that maybe Bailey should be on Broadway. Maybe in an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, because they sang for him there. And
Well, I would think with those kicks, maybe Radio City Music Hall might be more appropriate with the Rockettes.
The Rockette, but he'd either have to get a tan or work on his calves because his legs aren't that sexy. So I was watching this live because I knew, because of our recording schedule this week, I need to get it done. I figure I'll see how long I can stay awake, and then I'll watch the rest this morning, which I did. So I'm watching this live. I can't skip it. And goddamn, we got the Western swing dancing combined with the aggressive parkour mixed with the gymnastics in a random kind of wrote by the numbers mode of execution. And that's why I'm thinking Andrew Lloyd Webber, some kind of musical for all these guys. They're great dancers. And anything not involving a ladder looked like either a video game or a kung fu movie. At one point, for no reason, everybody, all six guys just fought simultaneously to the entrance stage so that Bailey could climb the ladder and stand on it with his back turned to everybody else in the fucking building forever, and then just trust that if he backflipped off, which they were standing there slack-jawed waiting to catch him. And once he backflipped off of it, then old Jungle Jackoff said, well, oh well. And he climbed up and did the same thing.
To a smaller pop.
To a smaller pop, because it's the same fucking thing. And he's not French Canadian. He wasn't born in French Canada. And then they just all went back to the ring once they were done there. And then everybody took more bumps on a group of people and hit each other with ladders. And the fans, every once in a while, there'd be like applause, like, oh, he returned the serve. And then they're sitting there. And this was a thing all night. They didn't come to watch it like a sporting event and to root for somebody and to hope somebody wins and somebody loses. They just came to, it's not a car race crowd where they're into the race. They're into waiting for somebody to hit the wall. And when somebody hits the wall, then they pop and they cheer. And then they sit there and wait for the next wall hit. Am I lying, Brian?
No, it's really awkward when it gets really silent. Like when you see someone climbing the ropes and there's no sound, you start asking yourself, like, are they saying to themselves, why am I doing this? Why did I get involved in this? It was a weird crowd all night. Now, with that said, they may have been as into this at times as they were anything on the show, but they were also as silent at times as they were the quietest chain match ever. We'll talk about a little bit later on. And then the other thing I hate, now that we'll just talk about things I hate, here's another thing I hate.
Yeah.
You know, one of those things you pointed out years ago, and once you see it, it never ends. Two guys are in the ring. Where are the other four?
Yes.
And it kept happening where two guys would have their thing and the other four just disappeared. They're all laying on the floor waiting for their spot. And yeah.
But then they can help set up the furniture, because at one time, Jungle Boy, he pulled out 3 tables, and then a couple other guys just came and helped him set them up in different places so they could use them. And that's when Nigel said, the crowd is in stunned silence at what they're seeing. Holy crap. Yeah, they were stunned. All right. How much did this cost? And then Jungle Boy, Hurricane Rana, rigor mortis off the ring onto one of the tables. It didn't break, but he landed on the ladder and hurt his leg. And El Clown double stomped Hong Kong Phooey through another table, and Commander rope walked buckle to buckle and dove off into a triple Lindy or whatever the fuck on Nick Wayne through the table. But then they just all kept taking bumps. And they built a bridge with the ladder that they could fight on. And then Nick Wayne, who has already been splashed off the top through a fucking table, but now he's back to splash the clown off a ladder through a table. And then Jungle Boy gave Nick Wayne the Canadian Destroyer off the ladder onto another ladder. But by that time, Hong Kong Phooey was back because he just got double stomped through the table. And he did a double knee drop backflip off the top rope onto a guy that was laying on a ladder and then got the contract. And I'm thinking, what the Jungle Jackoff must still have heat. Or they just wanted to put this guy over because it's his hometown. But now this fucking little goblin motherfucker is going to have a match with Kyle Felcher that's a foot taller and 50 pounds bigger. And who knows how far ahead he is in testosterone. Although the way they're dressing Kyle these days, I think he stole one of Megan Brain's headdresses later on in the program. But we'll get there when we get there. So this was what it's like when I can't skip one of these, apparently. Was this pretty much like they all are?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do more quick recordings after pay-per-views to get you to watch some of these matches, I think. Speedball Bailey was the right pick to win this. I know they re-signed Jack Perry. I have a tough time believing Jack Perry's ever gonna mean anything, ever. He'll be there, he'll be in the middle of the card. Every now and then he'll get a main event because he's buddies with the Bucks. But the fans don't react to him like a big star. They like his music. They like everyone's music.
Yeah.
You could argue it's closer now to when wrestling first started using music than ever before, where the music, anyone who comes out with music, that's it. If you have a whoa or something people could sing, they will sing it.
Well, but I was there when they started coming out to music, and you are wrong, sir. Because the only guys that got music were the ones that was already over.
Yeah, that's true.
And so they were already cheering, and it just made it bigger. But I will agree with you that then about a few years later, when they just said, well, everybody gets music, then that on the undercard, it started covering up for a lot of sins when you could come out and there was some fucking noise going on, even if it was only from a tape player.
But yeah, I don't think Jack Perry's going anywhere, doing anything. Can't do a promo still. Commander and Hologram and Clone. Was Hologram in this? No, it was just Clone and Commander.
And Mortis.
And
Rigor
Mortis. And
yeah.
Yeah, the right guy won. Especially in front of the home crowd. Got a big pop. That got a big pop. They were quiet right before it, but that got a big pop.
If Bailey was from my hometown, I'd move. Did you hear what happened to him last time he went home? State Farm told him to find a new neighbor.
All right. I don't know.
Anyway, yeah.
Official notice there.
The next match. It got you more than I thought it would. The next match on the agenda was the Hardley Boys against the team of Dick the Boozer and Will Ospreay. Kid, again, this whole thing. But can we all agree, regardless of whether we think that the Buckaroos are the trampoline cowboys and the smarmy little self-obsessed fucking children that they are, or that they're the greatest tag team in the world, do they need a makeover? Are they starting? I mean, people blistered the Rock and Roll Express. Some of the old smart aleck fans did when they were still wearing the Rock and Roll Express stuff in the 90s. And where are we at? We determined that the Buckaroos are older now than Ricky and Robert were when they were in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That was 3 or 4 years ago. We figured that out. Have they approached, I don't know, where are they at on the bruiser and crusher scale? The Hardley Boys. Can they just do something different? Anything? Get a new bandana?
They may be a little toner, but they're as skinny as ever. Nick Jackson is as skinny as ever, so it looks a little ridiculous when he's out there doing things. The big thing I would say is that they've aged out on using the word young.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about now. If you're talking about the human race, you're correct, but a Galapagos turtle or something like that, they could still squeeze it in. So the announcers were talking about how Moxley has made Ospreay the most dangerous fighting machine in AEW. So they've admitted that the hero of their stadium show that's going to be their next world champion that overcame the career-ending injury, etc., was so stupid and ineffectual that the top heel needed to train him to smarten him up to show him what to fucking do so that he could beat the broken down, washed up previous best bout machine in a battle of the goody two-shoeses. Special referee Adam Ant. Goody two shoes. Can't work, can't talk. What's the matter with you? Can't work, can't talk. What's the matter with you? Lowered expectations must come, 'cause it's gonna suck. All right. So Ospreay is a great athletic babyface when he's against a rough heel that will cheat and make him sell and he can fire up and come back. But when he's against Flippy McFlippy Doo, they're just another pair of guys doing the same shit we see. Ospreay and Nick, at one point, they collided head first, and you bought it for about 10 seconds until you realized, because they sold it. This is the only thing I can imagine they really sold. And then you realize Ospreay was fine, and he took half of it, and Nick, they were over calling attention to Nick being out of it, which to me, he just looked like Tommy Rich in a normal match.
And that was the story of this match, the idea that Nick Jackson had this head injury, and the spot looked good. But like you said, it quickly went from, oh, did he really get hit there, to, oh, they're playing into this whole thing. This was part of the plan. Like, it was obvious. They telegraphed everything.
So, meanwhile, the referee is asking if Nick can go on, and Moxley's telling Ospreay, get back at it. And Schaefer interfered and beat up Matty, and they got long heat on young Matty there. Moxley at one point, again, the guy Nick that just suffered the brain damage, he pile drove him on the floor. So, gosh, he'll be confused for 15, 20 seconds. They did more big stuff to Matt, but then Matt made his own comeback and reluctantly tagged Nick in, who was still dazed, but Nick made a comeback 100 miles an hour and then tagged back out. And then they double teamed. They did a lot more shit. Everybody did more. And then Ospreay flew in and hit Moxley with a forearm by mistake, but the Buckaroos took that opportunity to 2-on-1 Ospreay for a while, but then they foiled the Bucks and everybody hit a finish on another guy, but nobody even had time to cover anybody because they're just boom, 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 boom. And then everything came to a halt because when Ospreay and Nick squared off, Nick suddenly got woozy again. Had he been goddamn doing shit for the previous 5 minutes, Brian, or did they splice something in?
No, he was doing his thing.
And then oh shit, that really made me dizzy. Like when I bend over and stand up too fast. Only he did that for 5 minutes straight. So then he staggered, he went down to his knee, but then they started trading forearms. And then Ospreay just kicked Nick goofy, and Moxley was telling Ospreay to hurt him. But that's when little Maddie came in and covered Nick up. It's like, don't hurt him anymore. So then Moxley tagged in and threw Matt out of the ring and leveled Nick and covered him and got a 2 count. Then he got a choke on him. Then he started pummeling him. Then there were more false finishes. Why are they ever going to goddamn just go? And then Moxley DDT'd Nick. And again, and a third time, the guy with the brain damage, right? Remember him? 3 DDTs, and then got a chair and bumped the referee down. And he's going to fucking lay waste to poor Nick with the chair. But that's when Ospreay, well, I've had enough. I mean, it was one thing to just repeatedly pummel him over and over in the head when he's already concussed. But it's another thing to get a goddamn chair. And he jerked the chair away from Moxley. And Matt came in with a super kick, kicked the chair, which went into Ospreay's face, and boom, down he goes. And then the Nick's fine again. And they give the double knee lift to Moxley, but he no-sold it, just looked up and flipped him the bird with both hands. And then they super kicked him 10 times and pinned him 1, 2, 3. What the fuck was this?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by what happened there at the end. Happened all very quickly. The love triangle drama with Ospreay and Moxley and Omega. Another chapter will continue to play out throughout the night. The Bucks, a big surprising win after... I mean, what's the concussion protocol over there? I'm not really sure. But after a head injury, the Bucks still overcome it and kick themselves good. Man, you watch Matt Jackson.
Fortunately, they damaged his head, but there was nothing in there to be hurt.
You watch Matt Jackson do his super kicks when they were doing them in tandem. It's the most obvious slapping of his fucking thigh as he's doing it. Lazy little troll. Good match. All things considered, because at least it told a story. And then, of course, eventually everyone was... Well, he had a head... There's a man with a head injury. And
that can outperform any of the goddamn greatest athletes in the Olympics.
I didn't say they told the story well. I said at least there were, there was elements of a story. They had an idea. He'll get hurt, and then we'll win. And now we got Edge and Christian against the Bucks at Wembley. That should be a mighty big match to some. Back to you, Jim.
Well, let's go back to the show, Brian, because now the international title was on the line. The winner of this match is going to face the winner of the 6-way ladder match that happened here just shortly ago. Kyle Felcher came out wearing a crown of flowers and skewers. Was that it?
Looked like a pink Statue of Liberty.
That's what it looked like, the stuff that Megan Brain wears. What are they doing to him? He looks ridiculous in these outfits. What is the gimmick? Why does he come out with a shaved head with a tiara of flowers? I don't. And like all heels, Kyle wants to do this on his own with no outside interference. He's told the rest of his guys to stay away. He's goddamn going to win this honestly. Christ almighty. He could have been a prodigy. But I think at this point, he is into this never land that they live in of indie-rificness, and he's going to be another guy slapping his fucking leg and doing the same shit, only slower and with more effort in 10 years in these fucking indie-style promotions. And I zoned out on quite a bit of this. And also the puppies were in the room, so there was bellies that needed to be rubbed. But finally, toward the end, it had to be well over 20 minutes. And I did not pay a lot of attention, but finally I realized, goddamn, this is going on forever. Because I don't give a shit about Bandito and his stupid fucking move, as I've mentioned before. But finally, there, Kyle assumed the butt-fuck position. He, knowing that the most dangerous weapon that this guy has is if you purposely stand up, bend over, grab the second rope with both hands at a complete 90-degree angle and hold yourself rigid, you're going to be in trouble. So guess what he did? And Bandito gave him the German suplex, got a 2 count. And then Kyle hit a clothesline and turned him inside out, hit a knee lift, hit a brain buster, got a 2 count. And they did more stuff. And Kyle did a Michinoku driver off the top rope, got a 2 count. And then finally Kyle hit him with a kick, picked him up and gave him a brain buster on the top turnbuckle. 1, 2, 3, and I guarantee you 25 minutes. Does the heel ever cheat? Do the baby faces ever wonder why that they're not over and that nobody gives a shit because they always just get beat all the time? Or do they think that's the way it's supposed to go?
I can't explain a lot of the Tony booking or modern booking philosophies that have come from Tony and his disciples. I can't explain it. This is exactly what I thought it would be, and I liked it. At a certain point, though, it's kind of ridiculous. And by the way, all night, Tony Schiavone, even when it was quiet, he'd be screaming, "This is great! I'm loving this!" Nobody cares what you're loving, Dodo. It was a fine match. Now we got Fletcher versus Speedball, a big match. It's like David versus Goliath. Big height difference there. And, you know, once you think about it, and it happened a few times in this match, the Bandito move, the setup, the guy having to stand there bent over, it gets more and more ridiculous the more you think about it, and it happened a couple times in this match.
And, you know, it seems like you could see the guy coming if you just bent over and looked between your own legs. That's just me. Anyway, moving along, Brian, the next match was one that I'm sure that Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell would be proud of, or maybe Ivan Koloff, or, well, any of the deadly Russians that were practitioners of the Russian chain match, or the hillbillies that practiced the Tennessee chain match. Now we had a double, where were they? Double Montreal chain match. Apparently nobody fights with chains in Montreal. At least they got, I mean, these had to be, I don't know what the material would have been, aluminum? Because I can't say plastic. They put enough pressure pulling them that they weren't just plastic, but they had to be some lightweight metal because they were 20 feet fucking long, and yet they were just swinging them around and et cetera, and they weren't legitimate chains. So it wasn't a legitimate match either. Are the Connors Findlay team of the Dogs a legitimate team? Was any of this legitimate?
I don't know what kind of question that is. I don't know what to say. This was a match I didn't care about, a part of a feud I don't care about. Jay White got the big return pop a few months ago. And then
it hadn't been a few months.
Was it a month?
I don't know if it's been a month he's been back.
Well,
here's the thing.
They had the quietest chain match in the history of professional wrestling.
Well, and I popped for the fact that Gin and Juice are back. Old Jay White, Light Switch, and Juice Robinson. It's been so long since I've said his name. I just call him Juice. But they had that one banger with FTR years ago, and then Jay White got hurt and had to have a spleenectomy or whatever the fuck for a year and a half. And Juice was hurt. Like, okay, there's a there's a team you can kind of build on, except they're naturally a heel team, but they've been put in this position that the nerd fans like whatever they've done in Japan, and Connors and Finley, the match with Edge and Christian wasn't good. This match wasn't good. The reason why is not that Connors and Finley aren't at least as good as some of the other people on this roster. It's that they just showed up and nobody gives a shit. And they're assuming, Tony was assuming that people, oh, they've done this in Japan, so people will, well, no, the one guy's puny and Finley's a little bland. And together they've done nothing to make people give a shit except angles where they've beaten up whoever they're about to be booked with next, like they're already a main event team and that should be at a top spot. And so people just sit there and gawk. And I watch this basically for Juice because he entertains me. And after all this time, 5 years later or whatever it is, he's still the one they're beating. Everybody else gets to do shit except Juice. They tried hard in this, but it was the crowd was deathly quiet, propofol. I think if you'd have stabbed them in the fucking ass with a knife, they probably would have just taken it rather than emit a noise. And they quit using the ring for a long period of time. This gimmick is hard to work, a double chain match, even for veterans in the territory days. I think it was unnecessary here, except that the booker's a mark, or one of the boys in this match is a mark, and suggested it to the booker, but either one, I don't know why they thought they could have a good double chain match. Or if they didn't, how can they not be able to tell Tony, look, Tony, we'd love to have a goddamn match where we're all human piñatas hanging over the Grand Canyon, but we don't know if we can make it good. Babyface has made a long, boring comeback. Heels took back over. I wrote the fans are pulling pocket knives to slice their own wrists. Finley gave, who was it? One of the guys, a slam on top of his head.
Juice. That was Juice, I thought.
Juice. Yes.
Was it Juice?
Or no, it was Jay.
No, it was Jay White. It was Jay White, yeah.
And I was I don't know what the fuck, but then he sold it too. He's like, fuck. And then they took a bunch of awkward bumps and the baby faces whipped the shit out of Finley forever with the chain. And then Juice went for a big chain punch, but there was Wheeler Useless and Danny Garcia, and they pulled White out to the floor and beat him up. But the music played and the Gun Boys came out and they had a fight on the ramp. Marina Schaefer gave Finley his shillelagh and he hit Juice and beat him 1, 2, 3. And again, the only interesting guy, and they're still beating him. And boy, this was hard to get through. And the fans could have give a shit.
Yeah, this sucked. No, this sucked. And the fans weren't into it. It's weird when there's a gimmick in a match for a feud that really doesn't matter. Has barely been kicked off. Nobody cares about whatever history there is. And all of a sudden they have this big gimmick match to dead silence. Because the dogs haven't meant anything over there yet. Maybe when Gabe Kidd's back, it'll mean a little more. And I guess that's the connection with the Death Riders. I don't know why the Death Riders would have been involved otherwise. But yeah, and I don't give a shit. Do you
have like one of those fucking things on the wall with the pins and the strings and everything to be able to figure out, follow in Tony's mind who all is mad at each other because of things they've done here to each other previously, or in Japan where everyone reads the Japanese daily newspapers to keep up on that?
The highlight of the match for me was Which one's the shorter one? Is it Austin Gunn?
I don't know.
I think so. Right? Colton was the bigger one, I think. But when the Guns came out with Ace Austin, who again, another guy who hasn't established himself, he's just like hanging out with them.
Yeah, he was in the group, and now whenever they come out for a save, they not only equal the odds, but the baby faces have the uneven odds. Go ahead.
But Austin Gunn did this thing where he ran down the ramp and he jumped and he kind of went flying and it looked really good. Like the save was the highlight of the match. The one moment during the save where Austin Gunn jumped on the Death Riders was the best thing. Otherwise, this stunk. This was a bad match. So bad, Jim.
Bad match.
Such a bad match that we are going to take a commercial timeout right now. All right, making up notes, having a good time. We're back here on the drive-thru, Jim.
After the double chain match, you should have just gone, wah, 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 wah.
Well, there's still time to redeem themselves, for the AEW to redeem themselves with this card. AEW Redemption, let's find out how they did.
Well, we are 2 hours into the program, and I know it's going to be much, much longer. And the next match, it was 9 o'clock Eastern, and the old man was getting a little sleepy. The puppies had worn me out, and we came upon, for some championship or another, Hikaru Shida versus Maya World. And I said, you know what? You're welcome to it, and I'll pick it up tomorrow morning. And when I picked it up this morning, apparently the new champion is Maya World. Fill in the blanks.
Maya World, new TBS champion. She, of course, is coming off that really hot match with Mercedes Moné. So good, Meltzer won't rate it. That's how good it is. She's been getting a push. She's been getting over with them. You know, I think more and more it's a good idea to jump on someone who's getting over and give them a chance to get a push. But then again, everyone in the company has a belt. She wins the TBS championship from Hikaru Shida, who I'm not a fan of. It was an okay match, though. It was an okay match. New champion, Maya World.
Did they keep it under 20 minutes?
I believe so. The only thing I will say is a complaint, not even about the match. You know, I guess she has a backstory where her brother passed away right before she debuted for AEW or something like that, which they referenced over and over and over again on commentary. Eventually they got away from it, and then Shivani dragged it back to it. You know, let everyone know the story, but don't harp on it too much.
Well, it's you've got to, as Gary Hart used to say, repetition is the key when dealing with goofs. And for the casual television viewer and not people who dissect this shit, you've always got to reinforce what's going on, but that's repetition in terms of week to week television.
Right.
When you start saying something at the start, lay it out logically and understandably at the beginning, maybe reference it later on in the same match. But when you keep going back or don't even get off of this one particular thing, then that's when they know that you're trying to shove it down their throat rather than just imparting this information and letting them go, oh, well, that's cool or whatever. It's no, you have to know this, remember this. And then they start to kind of half-ass resent it, right? It's like, okay, I got the fucking picture.
Let's get to now. She's in this big match. Talk about this.
Yes.
Well, a good match.
So there are the lines of those things.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the next match, this was the tag team title, I guess, because everything's a title match. Edge and Christian against Claudio and Pac. Was this the tag title?
Indeed,
yes,
tag team championship. That's right.
Yes. So therefore, I started zoning out again because it's Claudio and Pac, and it's Edge and Christian. they're stars, but anything with the Death Riders or these other minor Japanese assemblages and groups that Tony keeps thinking that everybody's into, there wasn't anything wrong. I was playing with the pups for a good portion of this, but I didn't see unnecessary blood. I didn't see furniture. Claudio and Pac, I'm a fan of Claudio's. Pac, I can go either way. If he'll stay off the top rope where he, takes forever and a blah, 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 that's one thing. But who cares at this point? They're in this fucking group that won't go away. They milked a tag to Edge by getting heat on Christian, but that was kind of flat. And Edge made a comeback. That was kind of flat. They were trying, but that's where I really started reinforcing in my mind the thought, the emotion that I had earlier. The crowd came to see the car wrecks. If you're not going to break some furniture or bleed or jump off some shit or something's going to blow up, they don't care who wins. They're not rooting for anybody in a match. So they're just sitting there staring at it. And Edge at one point fired him up, milking a spear on Pac. And he's Canadian and he's Edge. And they're in, okay, give us the big spear. And he goes to spear him, and Edge or Pac leapfrogged it, and he missed it. And I'm like, shit, Jesus Christ. They would have blown. And then there was some more slow-paced shit where two guys will be on the floor, and they'll come in at the right time to make the save, and then you won't see somebody for a while. And then out of nowhere, finally, Edge did spear Pac, but it didn't get the pop the other one would have because it just kind of, oh, boom, 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 boom. Oh, there it is. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a fan of Edge and Christian. I've said that before. I'm not a fan of the Death Riders. I've said that many times before. Interesting start where they jump Edge before Christian has a chance to come out with his big grand entrance.
Yeah.
Which just points out how ridiculous it is that they both get giant entrances as a team. It was all right, actually. I mean, it wasn't great. I'd say good / all right. Not terrible. But not
good / all right.
Good / all right.
But now, wait a minute. Is all right better than good or good better than all right?
See, that's what I'm trying to, in my head as I'm doing this system live, coming up with this brand new system to take over wrestling. I don't know. I think all right comes before good.
I'm feeling all right. Uh-huh. I'm not feeling too good myself. Uh-huh.
I think
something
all
like
right,
that.
Good, great. You have to see this. Oh shit, I just came in the Tokyo Dome. That's the scale.
Can we change that to my pants?
Tokyo Dome or bust. Bust your nut.
Well, that's what Dave's pants make whenever he watches this shit is a Tokyo Dome. All righty, well, the point is, stop it now. Stop
it. Very good.
Well, we got to be serious here. We got serious wrestling to review here. We got a no holds barred match coming up. Now, you may think to yourself, what the fuck else have they not done already that they can't bar, right? The no holds barred match with Chris Jericho and Tommaso Ciampa. But in this one, Jericho's pulling out all the stops. He has reinvented him as his alter ego. What was it? Bray Wyatt had Uncle Howdy, and Finn Balor's got the Demon. And Chris Jericho has the Painmaker, where he comes out in a Hamburg hat, a bejeweled face mask, hiding evil clown face paint, and carrying a black barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. He looks like a goddamn wrestling versus Gene Simmons Temu character. And this is supposed to make him more violent, Brian, right? Because he's going to bring the pain. Or is it just the pain of the viewers that have to watch this? Where is the pain coming from?
If the pain maker is so good, why isn't he always the pain maker? Like,
well,
why wait until you have to settle a score? Why not win some matches?
Because he's almost 60 and he looks ridiculous dressed up this way. Would that be one reason, or is that entering into the conversation?
Can you imagine if Dick the Bruiser had come out in the 80s and started painting his face?
How old was Dick the Bruiser in 1985 when they had the infamous Bruiser and Crusher versus Road Warriors match?
We had just done that. He was in his mid-50s, wasn't he? We had just done that for 1984.
No, in 1985, would he have been 56 years old? How old is Chris Jericho right now? Do we know this off the top of our heads, or can you type that in that quickly?
Chris Jericho's 55 years old.
Boom goes the dynamite. Imagine Dick the Bruiser dressed up like a fucking BDSM version of a fucking Stephen King character.
Imagine Dick the Bruiser going up to young wrestlers in 1985 like, you gotta listen to me, I'll tell you how to make it, kid. Here's my booking ideas. But no, it's a different generation
anyway,
of older wrestlers now.
Well, nevertheless, they started out, Jericho had the bat and Tommaso had the chair, and they hit each other. Well, they hit each other's gimmick 3 times and the bat flew away. did we ever see it again? Can't remember if it came back. And then Jericho got sand and threw it in Ciampa's eyes, and they immediately went to the floor. And again, I wrote, the crowd is dead silent. Tommaso pulled out a table 2 minutes in. It took forever to set up, but Jericho foiled him by shooting him with a fire extinguisher. And the pop for the fire extinguisher was even a little mild. But then Jericho, he shot it all over to the point where they were like, motherfucker, now we need to breathe at this point.
He was shooting it straight up in the air so it spread everywhere.
Yes, and there's 2 kinds of fire extinguishers. And this, I assume, because nobody died, was not the toxic kind. But we did, I will admit, when there was things I didn't know, that I didn't know what I didn't know. And we did a fucking angle one time with the fire extinguisher in Smoky Mountain, and they had the wrong kind, and it was that shit you're not supposed to breathe. And fuck, you don't want to breathe for a while after that shit gets sprayed. I don't know the chemical formulations. I'm not a goddamn chemist. But you had, from then on, I always check. Now, make sure this is the kind of shit that's not poisonous. Anyway, it was like watching a match in a library. And Ciampa then gave Jericho Chris Daniels used to do that as the angel's wings, but he gave it off the apron through a table. And then I notated that Buddy was playing with my toes and jumped up in my lap at that point. And what a little cuddle buddy he's turned out to be, by the way. So then they finally woke up. They pulled out a hockey stick, and Ciampa was beaten. So the heel was beating up the babyface with a hockey stick, but the crowd started singing the hockey song, or the song that they sing at the hockey up there. And then
the hockey song.
Well, ole, 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 because they do it for soccer or football over there, but they do it for fucking hockey. Whatever, they're doing a goddamn song that doesn't have anything to do with whoever the fuck they want to win this match. And then Ciampa gets a trash can and pulls out a hockey helmet, and put on the opposing hockey jersey. I don't know who they were either. And pulled out a stuffed mascot of the Montreal team and beat up the stuffed mascot while dressed as the opposing team and got more nuclear heat than anything that happened on this show all fucking night. That's when they woke up. Whoa. And then he tried to pin the stuffed mascot, but Jericho made the save. And then he pinataed Ciampa with the hockey stick while Ciampa was wearing the can and then kissed the toy mascot. So now at least we know who the babyface, who the heel is. And then Jericho got a bag of thumbtacks and hockey pucks. And as you know, at this point, I'm fucking done here. And I fast forwarded 5 minutes. I'm like, certainly to God that now they're both bleeding. And they've set up a table covered in barbed wire, rolls of barbed wire on top of it, which you see in normal everyday situations. And Jericho gave Ciampa a Death Valley driver off the apron through the table of the barbed wire.
Did you see a little bit earlier when Jericho went under the ring? It may have been for the fire extinguisher, I'm not sure. You could see the barbed wire board. It was there. It was so visible, and he didn't go for it. It was so visible that like Nigel and Shivani had to reference it. Like, oh, look what's there. I guess we know what else is there. Like, yeah, why didn't he just take that at that point if it was there and he knew it?
Well, because it wasn't time for it yet. Because they got this all laid out. So after the fucking Death Valley driver off the apron, I was certainly to God, they're about ready to fucking end this thing. So I fast forward another couple minutes. And that's where they had set a big mirror across in the middle of the ring across two chairs. And Jericho was stabbing Ciampa in the head with a spike or a screwdriver or some shit. But then Ciampa gave Jericho his finish off the top rope, through the mirror sitting on the two chairs into the ring, cover, 2 count. At that point, I said, fuck it. And I read the next day and saw on today and saw on Twitter this morning that Jericho won when he took the power drill that Tommaso came up with somewhere and drilled him in the head with the power drill until Tommaso gave up and they rang the bell.
He gave up pretty quickly once he started getting drilled in the head, as, one would.
Most people do.
Most people, when you're getting a frontal lobotomy in the middle of a match, it's like, I'm out, uncle, that's it.
It's only those goddamn rotten KGB agents that can hang on for any length of time and under those circumstances.
Jericho also hit him with the Judas effect, wearing an elbow pad with thumbtacks. And he had a thumbtack stuck in his head throughout this match. I think maybe we've been too harsh to Jericho. If you look at it through the guise of he is maybe the greatest comedy wrestler, I can't even say it. He may be the greatest comedy wrestler of his generation. And this all may be just a gag. The joke may be on us.
He's the Andy Kaufman of wrestling is what you're saying, that he never breaks character.
The Painmaker. It's like his Tony Clifton. It's just ridiculous. He doesn't break character, and maybe we'll get it one day, but in the present day, his stuff sucks. His stuff just sucks. This show is awful. What's next, Jim?
And now, in all honesty, I'm going to be interested to see if the interweb universe has any backlash toward Redemption, or if the head mouth organ of the company, Uncle Dave, can possibly rate, even by their standards, are these good matches? Is anybody giving a shit about these matches, and are they as good, quote unquote, as what their normal idea of good or great, what their normal idea of great matches are? Or is this one a clinker even for the people that like this kind of thing?
Yeah, again, if it is based on how a match gets over in the room and the house is dead silent, although maybe they'll give you a pop at the finish. or when someone does something so spectacular that the natural inclination is to go, holy shit, wow.
Break furniture.
But that doesn't mean the match is good. So let's see how these star ratings are, because this was a sleepy crowd. And correct me if I'm wrong, Montreal's not known for their subdued audiences.
No, they're not shrinking violets by any man. You know those damn French Canadians from French Canada. They'll just tell you their feelings right out in front of you. All right, I'm going to tell you my feeling right out in front of this. Andrade versus Mark Davis. Can you imagine the 4 words that I wrote underneath that?
Oh, hell no. That's 3 words. Hold on. No fucking way. 3 words. I'm not watching this.
You were headed in the right direction. Not a fucking chance. Andre did come out with 4 models that looked like they were hired by Jim Hurd. So you remember the one now? It may be more excusable today because it was a joke when WCW kept trying to upgrade their goddamn productions. They wanted to have models come out with Flair because he was a ladies' man, or just wanted to put models in the audience or whatever. They were hiring these girls that not only were dressed and appeared from their demeanor as they were obviously, as Mama Cornette used to say, tits on a boar hog, that they were totally out of place and completely plants and not there on purpose. He'd get girls that weren't as pretty as the girls that sit in the stands in all the towns. And now I guess there's an excuse, because are there any girls sitting in these stands in these towns? But I don't know if it did Andrade any good here.
He also did the thing he does in every match now, where he has a girl that's been planted at ringside. It's never explained, because obviously it's a plant. You don't see this person throughout the night. You don't see them after the match. You never see them again at another show. And he walks up to them. He gets a selfie. Gets a kiss.
He knows where to go to also.
Takes off his pants, so now he's in just trunks. It's every match, and it happens. It usually feels like it happens halfway through the match, and it always happens like 15 minutes into the fucking match. These matches go on for a long time, and
well, it's what he needs a break.
I'm fascinated with their investment in Andrade. He has new merch. They're really trying to get How You Know over as a big thing. That's what's on the merch, is How You Know. And again, the idea that he has models, but they're not good looking models. The idea that they give him women to come out with, and it's like, at the end of the night before the bar closes, what the fuck?
What do these girls look like? Well, maybe she's the one that brought the 8-ball, but I don't know what the hell is.
And they look like they don't know what to do. They're like, all right, we just awkwardly walk with this guy that we just met 2 minutes ago that we never heard of before that.
There's clearly a physical connection between these people. They look like they're looking at him like he's a different species.
He is another one of these guys. I enjoy his stuff because I find it hysterical, because he keeps getting chances everywhere. This is the biggest chance he's ever gotten. Actually, right now in AEW, where Tony's like using him as a babyface, who the women buy tickets to see and sit ringside for. He's doing everything he can for Andrade right now. Almost like he's Tony's son-in-law or something. He's doing everything he can for Andrade right now.
Is it a plus to the women that they wouldn't have to argue with this guy, because they'd never understand what the fuck he's saying? It just nod.
The giveaway is Shivani. The giveaway is when, on a few different occasions, Andrade came out and Shivani, who, when he's not using his own dumb thoughts, is being fed stuff by Tony Khan. He's so cool. Look at how cool he is. What? You're a grown-up. What the fuck?
He's a modern-day Fonzarelli is what he is. He's so cool.
Well, Andrade Fonzarelli won the championship. Which championship was it?
This one was, for another title of some
national title.
National. They've got the national and the international and the continental, but they don't have the intercontinental. I bet you they'd love to. Well, Brian, the next championship on the line, the long awaited, only the second girls' title match we've seen tonight. Willow Nightingale versus Thekla. And you, young fellow, you've got me to say, oh, watch this, or to say I would watch it, right? You're like, oh, watch this. You remember saying that, don't you?
Yeah, I should have told you to watch the Maya World versus Sheeta match.
Well, see, you can't take things back now. See, shoulda, woulda, coulda. If as Mama Cornette would say, if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his butt on the ground. And I watched this for you. It was 3 hours and 45 minutes into this pay-per-view, plus the pre-show for the victims in the room sitting there. That's after every time that AEW pulls their equipment out and they leave one of these big shows, the cops have to come in and draw chalk outlines on every seat. And okay. I guess they're saying, well, the girls get equal rights because they went to the floor for minutes at a time without being counted out. The girls now are giving each other vertical suplexes, flat on the floor and just getting right up and continuing on. Thekla was biting Willow's injured ear. She'd had her ear stitched up from a previous attack on television, and they had it bandaged, and you could see a splotching of blood or whatever, but at least you could tell who the heel was. But the crowd continues to be in a coma. They should have taken the pieces of broken mirror from the street fight and held it up in front of the people, see if they were breathing. And these girls were not in a hurry. You have a girls' match 4 to 5 hours, depending on your perspective, into a fucking show. It's the death spot anyway. And they went a while. And a while. And there was a lot of back and forth. But then finally, Blue Sky came out, but Willow power bombed her on the floor. Good Lord. And then backslid Thekla 1, 2, 3, and Willow's the new champion. But Tekla's her drunken demeanor in the promos is a hoot and works. But I don't know, when she looks like she's been tippling before the fucking map. Maybe was it a style clash? There was a lot of stuff here that was either paint by the numbers or golly, we went outside the lines.
It was late in the evening.
It was late in the evening, and the shitty work was showing through.
You know, that is one of the more underrated Paul Simon songs, because you never hear it cited as being one of his best ones, but it has a great sound. It's a great recording. Great song.
But what about this match? Getting back to that song.
You know, it was really late in the night. I watched everything live as it happened. I started dozing off a little bit. Luckily, it kind of also woke me back up. Good moment seeing Willow. Surprised that Willow got the title from Thekla. But they wanted to set up Willow versus Mercedes more than they wanted to set up Thekla versus Mercedes. That makes sense. And
I wish somebody would recall Mercedes.
I hate to say it, but I feel like Thekla, you know, I know we did the Luna Vachon comparison the other day. I feel like Thekla would be like an awesome manager.
There you go.
You know, just I like her promos, and I like you said, the sway, the way she moves. Just there's something there. The matches are okay. It's not that she's not, you know, good in the ring or anything, but
you just don't want to see it.
You know, I'm trying to conjure up any memories I have of this other than I'm falling asleep. Willow seems so nice. Does her little finger thing and then her kick in the air. And another one who likes to kick.
And it's so terrible when people beat on her and when they hit her, when they hit Willow, hit Willow, hit Willow. Yeah, well, are you ready for the main event? See, this is the pay-per-view review, the likes of which you can't get anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen. The main event of the Redemption festivities here that was supposed to be originally, it's public knowledge now, was supposed to be MJF versus Kenny, where Kenny would redeem himself and win the title for all of his little followers and everything. And then they moved it up to TV, and all of a sudden they're stuck with a fucking pay-per-view, and they're like, oh, God damn it. So this is what we got.
Hey, that crowd at the beach was hotter than this crowd was. This wouldn't have been a good crowd for MJF to do his thing.
I've seen crowds in the fucking Arctic Circle that were hotter than this one was. That's, when they used to work on the prow of Admiral Peary's boat. You remember those days, Brian, back in the Gold Rush days. Anyway, for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, Kevin Knight challenging Kenny. And I knew that this was going to be a bit of a slog and possibly some falderall and shenanigans and baby tomfoolery going on, because they rang the bell. There was still 40 minutes left in this show, and we were well past 4 hours. And why did they do the thing where Kevin Knight, the heel, jumped Kenny from behind before the bell and beat him up a little bit? And then the referee said, well, don't do that, and waited until he was done beating him up and then rang the bell. And then Kenny was up and fighting right back. So why the fuck did you do that? Why? The sense of urgency and surprise and, oh my gosh, and the kind of the hook of a jump start back in the day, depending on who was doing it, it was to hook. Well, it always did, whether it depended on who was doing it or not, it was to hook the people from the start. And you would hear that the jump start would happen. The referee would go, oh shit, they're starting to ring the bell. And you'd hear the bell, and now the people are up, and there's this wild action. And it could be the heel coming across the ring and blindsiding the baby face while he's taking his jacket off. Or it could be the baby face is so anxious to get even that when he charges down the aisle, he rolls right in the ring and fucking here we go. Or it could be that both sides at the same time said, fuck you, we're going to fight. And oh shit. But you start the match on an up note, and you better have something to follow that. And it's not recommended to do that in most cases if you're going 30 or 40 minutes, because now you've set a pace. But you can hook people like that on a great, when the baby faces used to come from the front of the building instead of the locker room area, the misdirection play, and roll in behind the heels and give them a taste of their own medicine. That was wild. People go crazy. But if the heel jumps the baby face and the referee watches him beat him up, and then when he stops, then rings the bell, and then the baby face is fine and fighting back, then why did you just do any of that? And they went to the floor for minutes. And why does everyone act like that Kenny is flawless in his execution of everything and just is this incredible freak athlete? He was throwing a fucking windmill punch, like an unnatural movement. His basic shit, he's performative with all the gestures and the prancing and the turning and posing. You can't take any of this seriously. Am I the only one seeing this? Am I the only one with Roddy Piper's peepers here?
His punches don't look good. Whether it's the windmill punches or just attempts at punches, they never look good.
But I mean, that's it. It's not even just that, but just the overall movement of him. And is he got scoliosis? Is he hunching over more every day? But it was every AEW TV match, I think. Kevin Knight was trying hard. This is his chance. But I wrote on and on. What can they do that hasn't been done? And it lasted a while. And then finally, Kevin Knight hit the coast-to-coast drop kick again and then rolled out and got both title belts, his and Kenny's. And he set one down and then got up on the apron with one, and the referee came to him, and it was supposed to throw the belt where the referee would have, okay, turn around like a dipshit and walk over and get it. But when he tried to throw it, he fucking fumbled it and fell right in front of him. So he had to pick it up and throw it again. And then the referee falls for it. And then he gets belt number 2 and charged Kenny, but Kenny kicked him and hit the rock bottom on fucking, or was it Kenny hit the rock bottom or Knight hit the rock bottom on Kenny? But that was a 2 count, regardless of what it was. And then they went back and forth some more. They just, it's over excessive and confusing and cluttered and just on because they come up with all these brilliant ideas and they have to do them all at the same time. And then finally, when they were done, Kenny hit the one-winged fairy 1, 2, 3. And I knew there was trouble because we still had 12 minutes on the air according to the little time counter. And I'm thinking, well, there must be an extensive afterbirth. But
well, they teased it too, because there was a backstage promo a little earlier with Ospreay and Moxley, where Moxley gave him shit for not finishing the Young Bucks.
Oh, that's right. I did see that where he said, Moxley said to him, if you won't pull the trigger, I will.
Right. So it kind of teased that something absolutely has to happen tonight with Moxley and Omega.
But at the same time, there is Moxley already telling Ospreay, well, you need to run in and fucking attack this guy and hurt him before the match next month. But before we get there, your thoughts on the match. And my thought is Kevin Knight is good. He's very athletic and he was trying very hard. But the sight of Kenny at this point, to me, and his unnatural, weird, awkward movements is so off-putting. And just the excessive amount of everything that I'd seen to that point, this was a TV match to me.
And what did I say to you the last time when he wrestled MJF? I complained about it there. I've complained about it before. Every match with Omega has this long section battling on the floor with no countouts. It's every time. It's every match. It's a crutch. It's unneeded. You don't have to go 30 minutes. You could just shave those 4 minutes out and go in the ring and wrestle. I agree with you. Knight looked good. I'd say Omega looked good. You know, he got to do kind of his Kenny Omega greatest hits thing for that audience. And he
looks odd to me.
Well, he's an odd guy.
The hair and the shape of his head, the shape of his skull is odd to me.
I said that to you a while back. You didn't even react. Just the idea that his head has gotten, I compared him to Huggle from the movie Labyrinth. It's just become like a giant
Well,
head.
I didn't react because I've never seen that movie, but I'll agree that does he have some, can't really say swelling of the brain because it can't be that big to begin with, but there's some type of expansion going on there.
I don't know, but of course, like you said, a big post-match, and that really was the story. It almost felt like that was the most important thing actually on this entire pay-per-view card, which was unnecessary to say the least. This post-match, a big part of the ongoing story, the love affair, or the love triangle, I should say, between Omega and Moxley and Ospreay.
Yes, and James Taylor should write a song about it. So then here came our friend Dick the Boozer, John Moxley, and the Boar Horseman. And Kenny has just hit Knight with the deal, and he's won the match, and blah, blah, blah. But they jump Kenny, and Knight he was gone. They jump Kenny, and they start kicking the shit out of Kenny, and here comes the Buckaroos, because they're Kenny's boys. But they stop them too. They just beat them up because there's too many of them. Boy, is there too many of them. And then you can tell they meant business, Brian, because there's 5 of them, and they're these hand-to-hand combat masters and these badasses. So they stop to put a chair over Kenny's head to where they had to put his neck in it to where they're going to some intricate goddamn wrestling bullshit instead of just visually trying to hurt a guy. But Osprey comes in and he's, whoa, just stop it. Just no, you guys got to leave. Get out of here. No, you can't do this. I don't want it this way. No. What the hell's the matter with you? He even went so far as to shove Claudio down and swing a chair at the rest of them. Get the fuck out of here. And that's when Moxley stands up on the apron and starts making his weird movements that he makes and comes in with his hands behind his back and that mope face. Where it's like when Dracula hypnotized his victims so they wouldn't run when he's stalking them, so he's going to bite them on the neck. Moxley looks at you with this mope face, and Osprey just stood there and let Moxley talk to him. And, oh, you got to do this. And he took the chair from Osprey that he had run off the rest of Moxley's guys with. And he talked to him and he pulled out a plastic bag, did Moxley. And he gives it to Osprey. And now he said, now you got to do this. But Osprey's conflicted, folks. Can you tell the drama, the tension? You could cut it with a knife. Sort of smelled like somebody cut it like a fart. And this was taking so long. And then Osprey looks, he's gonna, for a second, I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna put this bag over Kenny's head, and that's gonna win me the title. I don't know if he suffocates him and kills him. I guess he could just walk out in Wembley and they hand him the belt. I don't know why I can understand weakening him, but don't you think attempted murder has gone too far in the course of you maybe screwing your own self out of a title shot? But nevertheless, they got to pull the trigger. But then, and Brian, this was my favorite part, to signal that Osprey says no, just like in Planet of the Apes, no. And he's breaking free of his captors, and he's going to defy John Moxley. He's going to rip the paper bag in half. Brian, did you see that he couldn't rip the paper or the plastic bag?
Yeah.
The plastic, he couldn't rip it. It wouldn't rip. He's trying to rip it. It ain't ripping. I think finally he got a piece of it on the third try. That was my favorite part. I could sympathize. I tried to squeeze a fucking egg in the palm of my hand, just a regular, just uncooked egg on Memphis TV Live one time, and realized that the ergonomic design is made so it withstands the trip out to fucking chicken's asshole, and it's hard to fucking crush it that way. But he couldn't rip the fucking bag.
Why were you crushing an egg on Memphis TV?
Because it was, oh goddamn, what were all the stipulations? My hair was at stake against the fabulous ones, but their hair and the titles were on the line and blah, blah, blah. But something about where you're going to look just like this egg and we're going to crush you. And then I started squeezing and Jimmy Hart's standing next to me. I said, Lance is holding the microphone. And I've been in the business like fucking 6 months. And this is one of my brilliant set piece ideas where I bring a prop and I do something memorable. And I started squeezing that. I can't pop that fucking egg. Just squeezing it. It wasn't hard boiled or anything. It's just, I didn't know, like, dig my fingernail in to break the seal somehow. I just think it'll just go, right? And it took me 1, 2, and I'm thinking it might be even better if I can't break it. And Jimmy Hart is going, come on, Jimmy. Rooting for me to break an egg. And finally I squeezed. I mean, it popped all over Lance's fucking suit. Lance jumped. He's like, oh. Oh, God damn it. Live television. Anyway, back to this horse shit. So he ripped the bag and punched Moxley And then the other heels ran at Osprey, but he evaded them. He boosted one over the top, and they took their own bumps out, and then they just gave up the fight because that's all you saw of them. They took off, and then Will Osprey picked up the title belt to hand it to Kenny, but Kenny was being wary of Osprey, and Kenny had picked up the plastic bag and like what? Because maybe he didn't see Osprey rip the bag. I don't know what the fuck they're trying to get across here, but Kenny ain't trusting Osprey. But then they shook hands and they started posing on the ropes, standing up on the rope. Yay, we're coming for each other at Wembley, and then Kenny just stood up underneath Osprey while he was standing on the ropes and gave him the one-winged fairy in the middle of the ring. Boom! And pointed to the plastic bag like, you were trying to do this to me. And then Kenny started posing. Bucks ran back in. And Kenny started fucking holding the belt over Osprey, and then he posed, and the Bucks are now like reluctant. Well, should we do our pose that signifies we're still friends? Well, of course we have to. It's a contractual commitment. So they're flexing their non-existent muscles on the other side of Kenny. While has he turned heel now on Osprey? Because Osprey's the one
that would really make Osprey the biggest sucker of all time, wouldn't it? If he's just a limp dick babyface going into this match after all this.
He finally punched the one heel he's been sucking up to for 6 months or whatever, and then
the other guy got turned on him.
The most Casper milquetoast son of a bitch in the company decides he's going to get some balls right then and there and turns heel on him.
Well, the road to Wembley Stadium is paved with
cobblestones.
All sorts of stones. Cobblestones, bricks, manure.
Kidney stones.
You never know. That was AEW Redemption. Any final thoughts on Redemption?
Yes, the last thing I wrote in my notes was all this for that.
Well, let's see what the fans think. $50 is $50. Of course, cheaper if you have HBO Max. But Jim, maybe it wouldn't have been such a milquetoast feel if Tony Khan had spent some money and gotten everyone in the crowd hooked up with Willie's Remedy.
You know what? That, Brian Last, would be the perfect idea. What he should have done, what you just came up with there, is if when they came in the door and they gave their ticket to the ticket taker, they should have handed the fan back a bottle of Willie's Remedy, whether it be the 5 milligram or maybe even the 10 milligram. Might have worked for this crowd or for this show a little bit better. But that way, the fans could have enjoyed themselves, regardless of what they were looking at. Because if they didn't enjoy the show that they came to watch, they could have a show in their own mind. Silver stages, golden curtains, fill your head plain as can be. Folks, Willie's, the Remedy that is a premium THC-infused social tonic. That means that you're going to be more social. You have a drink of Willie's, you're going to want to talk to your neighbor or your friend or a stranger or possibly even an enemy. You're going to want to be social. Everything about you is social. You're going to go out and be social. You're going to socialize. You're going to be part of the social crowd. You're going to eventually one day have social security. And who knows, statistically, you're probably going to get a social disease. But folks, Willie's social tonics, free from disease, they come in the 5 and 10 milligram doses. So smooth and balanced, you barely realize you're drinking a THC product at all. Brian, I can tell you, the first time I had a sip of Willie's, it didn't taste like THC. I had never tasted anything like that before. There was nothing to compare it to. So therefore, with a unique blend of THC, CBD, CBG, and most importantly, the L-theanine, you're going to be calm. You're going to be clear. You're going to have euphoria. Not the television series, but the state of mind and relaxation. And Brian, that's the important thing. Whether you're sitting alone after a hard day, trying to take the edge off before you fall off the edge, or if you're out there socializing with friends, you want to be calm and relaxed. Just if you're socializing with any of the enemies or the strangers, bear in mind now that after 5 or 6 shots of Willie's, they may be just picking your pockets. So don't do that.
Again, there's a lot of things not to do. What you should do is be safe, be cautious, whether drinking Willie's or just everyday life, walking down the street.
Actually, just keep your head on a swivel. If you go out in public these days, folks, just fucking look at everybody like they're a goddamn potential danger. There's a fucking enemy agent, some type of alien creature, or just some rogue person on their own mission is all around you.
A vigilante. So, wouldn't that be a vigilante?
A vigilante, and whether it's right or wrong, you can't say, folks. So what you need to do is take a shot or two of Willie's and walk down the street with your head on a swivel and instantly analyze every son of a bitch, both visually and whatever you could. If they're talking to themselves, that's a red flag. And you'll be able to hear better with Willie's too. So replace the alcohol.
You can't hear, so let's again.
Well, yeah, because you're concentrating.
Not promise things that we absolutely, positively know are not going to.
Well, it says it delivers a feeling of clarity. You can concentrate on your senses that you want to use, because you'll lose use of some of your other senses.
Once again, let's talk about the sense of feeling good. Feel good. And have a good, maybe at the end of the day, you want to unwind a little bit. Willie's is there for you.
People got 5 senses anyway. They can get by with 3 out of 5 ain't bad, folks. But, you don't want the regret and the hangover that comes with the alcohol, as well as the various offenses that you can commit by using alcohol in public. Well, Willie's is you're just right out in front of everybody. His face is on the label, and everybody knows what's going on with Willie's. So wink, wink. Right now, Willie's is shipping directly to your doorstep in over 40 states. What?
No, everyone knows about Willie. Wink, wink.
Yes. Well, he's making no secret of it. And right now, Willie's, as I said, is shipping in 40 plus states, soon to be all of them. But in the meantime, just drive across state lines. It's not a violation of the Mann Act unless... well, I don't know what you're doing with that chick you got in the car, mister, but you're in for trouble. But go now to drinkwillies.com. 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 And use the promo code JCE. You're going to get 20% off your first order and free shipping on orders over $95. And you can live like a legend. Like a 90-something-year-old legend like Willie. He's got to have something going for him. And look at all the shit he's seen and done. Good heavens, I'm surprised they didn't stuff him with formaldehyde 25 years ago, but he's still cooking.
Okay, let's get back.
So Ed, he must have the remedy, and you can have some too. Drinkwillies.com, promo code JCE, 20% off your first order, free shipping on orders over $95. And actually, from what I understand, if you're over 95 years old, you can get some kind of discount also.
From what I understand, we don't understand that. I have not heard anything about that, and I have nothing in writing saying that.
Well, you ought to try. What the hell?
Promise deals here at the end that
what have you got to lose? You're 95. Try it. Try anything at 95. Somebody will give you something. Just because they're amazed.
Once again, Jim, that promo code and that link for a great deal for the listeners.
JCE is the promo code. 20% off is what you get. Free shipping on orders over $95 is what they're going to give you. Drinkwillies.com is the place to go. And 95 is the magic age. If you're 96, you're going to be able to get a lot of free shit.
Once again, Drink Willie's. Drinkwillies.com. I don't know why I yelled that. Drinkwillies.com. Promo code JCE. A great deal for new customers. Well, Jim, this email was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. From KP in Atlanta. I'd love to get Jim's take on wrestlers' tattoos. Recently, I noticed Kyle Fletcher's hideous thigh tat.
He just did that, Rick, because I was noticing that on the pay-per-view, and I thought, has that always been there?
That's brand new. It reminded me of the Cody Rhodes tat that he tries to cover up under his suits. In the territory days, did the bookers have any say over this? Could a guy be cut if they didn't like it? And what was the worst tattoo Jim ever saw on a guy? And just to expand upon KP's question here, like, I remember when not everyone had tattoos, let alone tattoos everywhere. Yeah. Like, Harley Race stood out. He was like an old sailor. He had tattoos on his arms.
Well, and that's the thing, is some of these guys actually did, the guys who were in their 20s and the late 40s, early 50s, Korean War, whatever, they got their tattoos in the service. But you hit the thing. One of the answers, and I didn't take notes on all the sub references in that question, but one thing is not everybody had tattoos. And the guys in wrestling that had tattoos generally looked like they should have tattoos. Bam Bam Bigelow, when a motherfucker's got his head tattooed in flames and looks like that the rest of him, you didn't see that every day. But by the same token, a lot of the baby faces, it was more of the, the cute era, the 70s and 80s, where you wanted the baby faces to be cute and not look like Motley Crue or whatever the fuck. As far as the bookers having control, no, they didn't. Because if you were an underneath guy and a booker didn't like your look, because why does he got that fucking ugly tattoo? He just wouldn't book you. And if you were a top guy, Don Fargo looked like he should have tattoos, right? But if you were a main event guy and the tattoos were part of your gimmick and drawing money, then, fine, I'll bring you in. And by the same token, if a top guy, you just innately knew in those days, Jerry Lawler was not going to shave his back and go out and get a giant skull tattooed across his shoulders and then surprise Jerry Jarrett with it, because that would have been ridiculous on everybody's part. The top guys knew, if I'm going to have this successful gimmick and I'm going to do something that completely changes my look, well, that would be a stupid thing. You only change your look drastically when you're starving and making no money. So I don't remember a time where a guy in the territories tattooed himself out of position. But now in modern times, where it's not only become more prevalent, but guys don't understand, the spot they are supposed to be shooting for, or that the promoter wants them to be in. Brock went out and got that giant, what is it, all over his back or his shoulder, the dagger and the fucking, I don't know, a rose and a fisted glove, whatever he's fucking wearing over there, while he was in OVW, without telling anybody, talent relations, whatever. And they were at that point. Now you're going to say, well, it looks fine. Well, yeah, now Brock's fucking 50 years old or whatever he is, and he's been over for 25 years. But they thought they had this Olympic not gold medal, but Olympic, level NCAA champion amateur wrestler babyface is 24 years old. And now he looks like he just joined a biker gang. So that's when when guys would do something where they had merchandise out, but the lead time on it was 6 or 9 months or a year for the figures or whatever it was. And motherfucker, by the time that shit comes out, you don't look like this anymore. That's where, in modern days, with the micromanagement of the WWF and the bigger companies, that's where that came into play. What was the other parts of his question?
Hold on here. It was also about, the bookers have a say in it. Could guys be cut if they didn't like it? What was the worst tattoo you ever saw on a guy?
Oh, here's what I was going to say is, I mean, worst is subjective, and there was many of them that I never knew what the fuck they were.
What did you think of
Right?
Johnny Marlin when you were a kid? Johnny Eagles.
Well, that was kind of cool because he was like one of those pirates with an accent that I saw in the movies when I'm fucking 11, right? On TV or whatever. I didn't know he was just a salty old British guy that probably got tattoos when he was wrestling people in the carnival or whatever. But that was different because he's exotic. He's from England. But a lot of times you know, unless I'm standing there staring at a guy's anatomy, I don't know what the fucking, they all blur together to me. But I remember the poor guy, they made fun of him because Lance Archer, when he was Lance Hoyt in TNA, whatever, he had, what do the kids call it, across the bottom of your back, a tramp stamp?
A tramp stamp, that's right.
He had the tattoo that I guess is traditionally in the spot and kind of resembling what one of these young ladies who wear the low slung hip huggers and live in a trailer park would fucking display. And all of guys was, hey, he's got a tramp stamp. So I don't care.
Why did he do that?
I don't know.
It did stop me from ever taking him seriously, like when he was young in TNA, or after that he added more tattoos to it, so it just looked like there was a giant tattoo from head to toe, not a tramp stamp.
Yes.
So I mean,
but,
whatever.
The Cody, when we went over, that's probably on YouTube. I remember we talked about that at length because I don't even mind the design as much as the placement. It looks odd, as I believe Brandy reinforced our opinion. It looks odd on him. If he had it over his heart, I would probably, I'd, you know what, that gives him a little something. But just on the neck, it's like, fuck, it just got stuck and wouldn't go in the right place, and they left it there.
It's not even centered. It's just like plopped down crooked a little bit.
It's got a little Dutch tilt to it for you cinematographers out there.
Yeah, you know, I blame Goldberg. I feel like he made it so acceptable in society for like everyone to get tribal tattoos, and that kind of opened a lot of doors. I blame Goldberg, Henry Rollins, and Axl Rose for making everyone in America think they should get tattoos.
I blame Hervé Villachez
for being tattooed.
He was.
Oh, get out!
He was the first. He was the first one I ever saw.
I think we've referenced almost every decade in the 20th century so far here on this program today, and there'll be more. But what do you think about like the idea of Kyle Fletcher? He's kind of established now.
He's overdoing it, and he's young. He's going to run out of fucking space, and then, you know, that's. He's a good-looking young guy with a nice physique, but he looked so young. Remember at the start, he looked like he was 12 years old, and that accent and everything, and that doesn't help. But at first, they tried to go with the floppy blonde hair on top, and that at least he was going for a look, I believe, was what our statement was. At least he's going for something. But then they shaved his head. They've put him in these series of ludicrous custom-made outfits. And what the fuck is this? And now the tattoos all over the place. Before they hit on something that's actually going to fucking work and stick, they're going to have muddied up the whole canvas. And I think at this point, for a guy that young to have that many tattoos all over the place, when he's got a nice body, you just have somebody punch him in the face a couple times and scar him up, and he'll age and look older. But you don't need to make him look like a fucking human ink blot. And let him have some kind of goddamn hair.
All right, Jim,
that tall, that big of a body, etc. He looks like a peanut head with no hair. His little head's a little pea.
Well, Jim, on that note, we'll let the audience take a little pee. We'll be right back with WWE Unreal after this short commercial timeout. All right, there's anger in my hand today. You feel it. You hear it. Jim, Let's pick up from where we left off on the experience. WWE Unreal Season 3 out right now on Netflix. It escaped. Everyone has so much to say, yet everyone wants to hear what you have to say. We have to talk about episodes 3, 4, and 5.
Well, in episode 3 was Rise and Rumble, because young man Rumble, because we were coming up on the Royal Rumble. And after the first couple of episodes, I mentioned this, the folks can go back and listen to the previous reviews if they so choose on YouTube, but they're kind of filling time on this show. It's a contractual commitment and at the same time, an opportunity to tell us how brilliant their creative force is to be able to just twist and turn and pivot on a dime. And otherwise, with a couple of noted exceptions, by the time we got through into episode 3 pretty good and starting on 4 and 5, it was starting to drag. And did you notice that this may have been the tipping point, this episode here, where it was starting to drag a little bit?
Well, again, we're post-Cena now, so there's a lot of other people to focus on, and I thought episode 3, I don't remember specifically what was on 3, but there were still good moments and things that I was interested in for the other episodes.
Yes, there was, there's, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play? No, there's still some good things to come, but they're coming up on the Royal Rumble. They wanted Braun to win the thing, but they were afraid there'd be a backlash for the overpush. They remember Die, Rocky, Die. And at the same time,
work. Which, honestly, the Braun Breaker pushes never felt like the Rocky Maivia one did before the chant started. So it doesn't even seem like it doesn't even feel like when Roman Reigns got rejected. Because that was after a heel run with the Shield.
Well, and the thing is, from the time that we first saw Rocky, he was pushed to the moon, whereas we've seen Braun for a few years now, and it was in NXT first. It was a soft launch, as they say. But they sent Seth to Birmingham to get his shoulder fixed. My apologies to all the people in Birmingham, Alabama, but that was the phrase that every wrestler has dreaded for 40 years. We're going to send you to Birmingham. Because now I guess, God, Dr. Andrews, if he's operating now, I believe I would probably not want him to do it on me because he's got to be 80. So, but the clinic is named after Dr. James Andrews, but he's been the guy that put everybody of any note back together in the wrestling business for the past 40 years, right?
Not just
but you got to go to Birmingham.
Yeah, not just the wrestling business, all throughout sports.
Yeah, because he's the preeminent sports clinic in the country. And they showed Becky disgusted by the surgery footage, as I didn't even attempt to look at it. And again, they were at the Survivor Series, the War Games, where they had wanted to feature Braun there, and it was the Doomsday by Punk and Cody where he landed on his head. Remember, we talked about it at the time, and they were going to make the call, just have Bronson Reed do all of his shit. But he was okay. But that led to them looking to NXT for the new stars, the next new stars. And boy, people are just hate Bruce Pritchard. I can't even remember whether this was the episode or not that he said it, but it got out online that the clip going around of Bruce said, well, bring up Trick and bring up Oba. They're not going to be fucking ready, but, and they crucify. There's a lot of things you could crucify Bruce for, but that's not really one of them, because anybody that comes from NXT is not going to be ready. Completely ready, completely, we know everything we need to know here. It's still a learning process, but there's times where they're ready to take the next step. And, they were.
Part of the issue is he cited 2 guys that hit the ground running.
Yeah.
They were ready, and they have been ready, and there's been no signs of them not being ready, and they were in NXT a long time.
But also, Bruce is just so overbearing.
Yes.
Anyway,
I agree.
So they had footage of Trick Williams showing Lash LaRue an elephant at the zoo. And I kind of skipped ahead. And they had a piece on Trick Williams, and I was distracted because I had puppies in my lap vying for position. But then we got to Oba. And again, this is the kind of thing they can do. They did it with Braun. It's noted that he was a track and field star, and they had footage of him throwing a shot put. But at the same time, he was a kid in Nigeria that was watching the WWE. That's the kind of shit. If you want to be a shoot program and tell the truth, and well, there you go. It looks like he's somebody. And when he tried out, apparently in 2021, they knew they had a star. Looking at that video, you can tell. And even Triple H, love him or hate him, he said it's not the moves, it's what you do in between the moves. And that's at least the shortest way of putting it I think I've ever heard, if not the most profound.
Well, I don't know how profound it was. I mean, I guess he shortened the statement about the little things.
Well, it's not the moves, because a lot of people can do the moves, but how do you look in between the moves? What's the expression on your face? How magnetic is your personality? How invested are they already to the point where you've done that move that they react? Whatever. It's the intangible shit that a person has to look a certain way or have a certain type of charisma or perform with a certain level of aggression or urgency or emotion of some description. And that's what, you can teach the other shit, but you can't teach that. So anyway, and then Chelsea Green was in the concrete block house that she's been building for 3 years, I guess, down there in Florida to absorb the hurricanes or whatever. The last season, she just showed off the interior of the blocks, and now she's living in the house with her husband, Mr. Green. Don't know if I caught his first name. And at that point, I sensed another segment on celebrities' home life, and I skipped ahead. Did I miss anything?
Not really, no.
Well, then we saw a lot of the girls in Saudi Arabia, which is, well, I tell you what, that certainly has reversed itself real quick from, goddamn, we all have to go and wear burlap sacks and we're fearing for our lives, to now they're just traipsing around and enjoying themselves. And then they did a package on the men's rumble in Saudi Arabia that Roman won. And that's what a lot of these shows started becoming, packages of the big events. And then, what are we going to plan next? Type of thing.
Hey, what do you take away from the fact that Roman's not involved in any of this?
I'm thinking that maybe Heyman suggested that he might not want to be involved in this because it creates, or doesn't create, but it maintains some kind of mystique around him. Remember, the biography of Roman Reigns was a Paul Heyman directed cinematic masterpiece that still is, well, they had to do things that admitted at some point the business was a work. It still presented Roman Reigns like he's one of the biggest fucking celebrities on the planet. And his fabulous backstory, and it's all part of the plan, Smithers. Do we want to put him in that atmosphere? This atmosphere of the unreal. He'd be the unreal one. Well,
back to Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's where this episode ended, old episode 3. It just, they got the Roman title match at Mania, and they see money in Brock and Oba. And that's where that's really what we got out of Seg 3. It was I don't know. Help me. Were you fascinated, captivated,
No,
motivated?
I don't. I think it's a well done series. It's very well done.
Nice editing.
You question everyone's honesty. I quite frankly question. I bring up Roman Reigns before. I question the motives of everyone who wants to be a part of this. They can't command Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch to bring the camera crew into the hospital. They wanted to do that. They want to show this side of them to the world. This side of themselves, I should say, to the world. It's very interesting. Less Cody this season than previously. But it's a fun rollicking hour.
It's fun, and they're doing good. Well, episode 4 of Unreal was even more of Unreal. That's the way we can say it. Titled Life Happens. And this is the one of the whole series. I could have just watched the footage of Punk and AJ Lee with Larry and the story of their relationship. And then it ended here, and I'd have been happy because that was, that's the only, I don't care about people's married life or their personal life or their home life or any of that. If you're not telling me about their dog, I don't give a shit. But Larry was the most famous dog in wrestling. And this was where the show opened, where Punk was doing an interview and he was just down or distracted or whatever. And he hadn't told anybody why at that point. And he and AJ had promised each other that they would they would wait to let people know that Larry was gone. But that's why I remember when at first we didn't know why he came out with the Larry's dad patch on his jacket. And then we found out after the show, but they looked at him like a misfit that needed to find his people. And that was kind of like what Punk said they saw in themselves or whatever. So anyway, that is all the personal life I care to see about people. Am I alone in that? Who gives a shit about people's meandering fucking menial personal lives?
I liked it, actually. I thought it was really nice to see. And I think I said it the other day, CM Punk has never been more relatable and likable than he was presented in this. And it made me like AJ. I haven't really been a fan of her on-screen stuff. But as a person watching this, it really made me root for her. Really made me think, yeah, all right, good for her. I don't want to watch her stuff, but it really humanized them. And I think CM Punk is one of the people that humanizing him doesn't hurt him because the authenticity is what he's selling.
Yes, because he has a connection with people because they don't think that he's, for good or bad, he's not bullshit. And he talks to people instead of at them, as we've said. But nevertheless, as the show moves on, life happens because things are going south, as they say. Triple H was talking about having to change plans at various points. I forgot about Naomi. So many other things have happened. Where's that heifer been? She got pregnant, had to give up the belt. And she said, well, in 9 months and some change, I want to see Naomi. I will watch Naomi whenever Naomi comes back. She was cutting promos, had just switched heel. It was enjoyable. But then they replaced her with Stephanie Vacker, which
she's good. Oh, this made me really like Stephanie Vacker even more than I already did. Her backstory. I like how serious she is. I thought that was some of the best stuff in this.
She's serious like a third grade librarian is serious.
Oh, come on.
Not necessarily in a way that you want to fucking be captivated by for long-term storytelling.
My third grade librarian was a mean lady. She was mean.
I was zipping over. Don't you say that about Myrtle Reed,
Mrs.
my
Fleischman.
first grade teacher. Anyway, I skipped over Stephanie because she wasn't going to call anybody a heifer.
Oh, come on. It was actually some good stuff. She got hurt in the ring early on in Mexico. And that's why she paints half her face, because that's where, whatever it was, she broke her nose and her orbital bone. It was like a whole big mess. And she didn't give up on her dream. She came all the way from Chile to Mexico because that was the clearest path to international stardom. And now she was here. And her dad got to see her on the biggest stage of all.
So she went from Chile today to hot tamale.
I thought it was a nice section of this.
Well, back to Braun Breaker. Apparently, when he gave himself the hernia, it wasn't by flipping that big announce desk over. It was by screaming during the promo. And when he went in the back and bent over and was selling and realized he couldn't stand upright, they took him to the hospital immediately. And they showed Bruce telling Triple H, hey, he's got a hernia. So, and that was 6 weeks before he was going to be able to train and blah, blah, blah. So Seth was injured and they pivoted to Braun, and then Braun was injured. And then they said, well, Bronson Reed, and boy, howdy, he's going to just be our guy. And remember, on that goofy looking save, he tore his bicep. And this is where they can isolate the audio they've got on those floor cameras and wherever the mics are placed around the ring. So you can hear the guys talking to each other. It's clearer than a goddamn FBI wiretapping audio. And he's like, yeah, I just fucked my bicep. And they've done that on a couple of different times in this show where you can, yeah, I'm completely fucked up, but you can hear it plain as day. So that is, as we've said, ridiculous, Brian, that everybody they tried to put in this group of young guys to elevate everybody, they've been elevated all right. They've been airlifted.
Yeah, and of course, after this, Logan got hurt too.
Yeah, they weren't even there yet. It's, they can't keep up with the injuries. But then they had the Elimination Chamber. Seth was hiding in a bus. Surprised Moose Cholak didn't make a cameo as the bus driver in Chicago. Do you think that Rhea Ripley should stop appearing on television without her makeup and not in her gear? She looks like a normal person.
Oh, she's so good looking like that. Without makeup.
No, she looks, no, I'm not talking about good or not good. Normal. She looks normal. She has an aura. If any woman in the world should walk around in the airport or goddamn show up on Jimmy Fallon like Hulk Hogan did, where he was always in the gimmick, it should be Rhea Ripley. She can be bigger than life.
We'll find out. I heard she's going to be in some horror movie that's coming out soon. So that means red carpets. That means interviews. And if so, let's see what she's wearing, I guess.
What are you wearing?
What do you think, Mr. Blackwell? What do you think of Rhea Ripley this year?
Well, I'm just telling you, she does wonderful things with chainmail and fucking, garter belts. Anyway, they did a package on the Women's Elimination Chamber where everybody hugged after. And then AJ and Becky, where everybody hugged after. And then Punk and Finn. And then the Men's Chamber package. And Seth invaded and Orton won. And Seth came out from under the mask and all the falderall that we covered when it happened. But that's what I'm saying. The last bit of this episode 4 was just recaps on the big matches at the big show and everybody hugging afterwards. Am I being too harsh?
It feels like each episode builds to the end being some big show or some PLE
where everybody hugs afterwards.
That's right. Claps, a lot of big standing ovations, and again, the
creepiest
champagne room of all time. Gorilla position.
Well, you know, Brian, it was all building to one thing. Episode 5, the title gives it away. You can't hide from this title, the grandest stage. They got to be talking about WrestleMania, unless they're talking about the stage on the far right at the Gold Club. One of those would be the grandest one. And they had been talking about a lot of these guys and building things up and et cetera. And Cody popped in. You said there wasn't a lot of Cody. He was at the WWE warehouse looking at the old belts and robes and props and et cetera. And boy, I guarantee you a promoter in the old days would use the same belt if he could get away with it, and some did for 20 years, rather than pay to have a new belt made. And they have a new belt made every time they goddamn switch the belt. They've just got boxes and rows of them up there. And he looked at his old trunks and everything. That gave us a little history on Cody and Orton. And they VTR'd Stephanie caving in Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez's heads. That was good to see again. What the fuck? And then Braun kind of surprise returned at Mania, and I was kind of bored by this point. And they did stuff on Seth and Gunther and Liv and Stephanie and Cody and Orton. There was the quote in there, "We are interjecting Pat McAfee into this to help the people dislike Orton." It didn't work, did it?
Not at all. They made them dislike McAfee more.
Yes. And Cody had to say, "Hey, should Pat be involved?" Well, the crowd said no. So they got Jelly Roll and McAfee out of the way before the bell, and then they got the match going. And Cody's eye, as we thought, you know, when we heard that not only was he busted open, but his eye was swelled up, that Orton got him with the shin of his boot on the way by. And then, you know, they went to WrestleMania Night 2, where Cody was going to go from the top to the desk or whatever, and they packaged Oba and Brock and Trick and Sammy and Punk and Roman. And the last, 15 minutes of the show was packages on the last 4 or 5 matches on the show. The end until next season.
Do you have any shows that you don't fast forward through?
Yes, but none of them related to wrestling.
Yeah, are any of them related to wrestling? That was my next question.
No, not a single one.
All right, any...
I mean, how much can you... They're filling time now. They're filling time. They don't have a story to tell. They have a show to tell it in. And they're making a bunch of shit up, and I'm not particularly fucking amused.
Well, that was WWE Unreal. The opposite of WWE Real. But that was WWE Unreal Season 3. We'll pick it up again when Season 4 comes out.
Oh, jeez.
We're going to get to our list now. We'll return to this of the top wrestlers in their 20s in 1994, trying to put together a top 20 list. We're going to get a few more questions at the end, but I know we promised retro figures. Retro figures definitely next week. New songs next week. Guess the program next week. But we had a lot.
Also, SummerSlam next week.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, see?
All right, well, we have to get the questions. People need to be heard. But
People need to be heard.
Let's get to this list here, Jim. Once again, this is part 2. Began last week. The top wrestlers in their 20s in 1994. Our attempt to put a list together. Jim, let's return to the list exactly where we left off.
And the one thing that we noticed is there's a lot of different names on this list that were that were not on the 1984 list 10 years earlier. But there's a lot more names, but there was a lot fewer places to work because basically the two main companies had gobbled up tons of talent, and then the rest of the guys were hanging around in ECW or on the fringe of things.
Well, let's return to WCW, not the fringe of things. Turning 24 in January, Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
Oh boy, howdy, the inimitable, often imitated but never duplicated. I never spent almost any time around him. We were always in a different place whenever, since the time he's gotten in the business, but obviously the stories and the tales and the fables live on. I can't remember what he was doing in 1994 because I know there was a period of time where they began using him well. But hey, can Bagwell ever get over the stigma of kind of being the most attention-getting middle card guy with the weirdest out-of-the-ring stories?
No, I think actually what killed it, not that it's like, I don't know, I'm not blaming him, but Jim Ross openly and with disgust talking about Judy Bagwell calling the office for Marcus. That killed it, I think, for anything else ever happening again anywhere. That was one of the things, but you never can get past that thought. And of course, that match with Booker T on WWE Raw was a disaster. But 94, young wrestler in WCW, that may be the year that he got the infection in his calves for having fake muscles put in there.
That's right.
But I think he went from teaming with Too Cold Scorpio to teaming with the Patriot in Stars and Stripes. So tag team wrestler predominantly.
Well, I remember when he was the handsome stranger for Joe Pedicino in that little short Global Wrestling Federation run that Joe started when he thought that the Nigerian guy had millions of dollars. And Joe loved that gimmick. He had like a tuxedo jacket of some kind on, a little bow tie like a male stripper. And his hair was lovely. And he had this sparkly Lone Ranger mask, and he would come down to the ring and give roses, red roses to one of the women or some of the women in the front row or whatever. And Joe's like, and the thing is, nobody's going to know who he is. I said, that's because nobody knows who the fuck he is. And when you take the mask off him, everybody's going to say, who the fuck is that? Because nobody knew who the fuck he was.
Well, again, he's the handsome stranger, not the handsome mystery.
Well, he should have been the handsome fucking, unknown person.
Well, I'm guessing not on your list for 1994.
Probably not.
His future tag team partner, who I believe wrestled for you in 94, he would turn 27 in March. Scott Studd.
Yes, Scott Studd, and I'm trying to think what his real last name was. His first name was really Scott
Anton?
That's it, I believe. But nevertheless, the reason why he worked well, he was a good kid with a nice body and he could work. He had just broken in. But the reason why he came to be booked for me was because he lived in Atlanta and he was the guy driving Jake Roberts to shows. And so that was obviously part of the thing. And I used him a couple times even without Jake, I think, because he was a good kid. But he was the guy that when Jake got the $25,000 cash guarantee to shave his head in Mexico, Scott Studd went down with him. They gave Jake, and this because he came back and worked for me the next weekend in Knoxville. Both of them did. So I heard the story when it was fresh. They gave Jake the 25 grand in cash, and Jake gave it to Scott Studd. And while Jake went to the ring to do the hair match, Scott Studd took the money and locked himself in their rental car in the parking lot. And when Jake was finished, he immediately went straight out the back door, jumped in the rental car, dressed the way he was, and they both went to the airport and dropped the car off and went to the gate for the flight that was leaving the next morning. So they were actually in the airport in public view the whole fucking time, and nobody could goddamn come and take the money back.
So not on your list for 1994.
Not on my list for 1994, though, Scott Studd.
The next name I'm going to say, but actually this should not be here because he's not in his 20s in 1994, so not eligible. Turning 19 in May, Alex Wright.
The son of is he German? Is he Austrian? One of those countries.
German, I believe. What was he? Das Wunderkind.
Stephen Wright was his father. And Stephen Wright was a wrestler from the 60s, 70s, early 80s at least.
Early 80s, New Japan. I saw him in Tiger Mask on tape. That was awesome.
And that's the thing, is that when I first heard, the son of Stephen Wright, I was thinking, wow, because I've seen the tapes. And Stephen Wright, not the comedian, by the way, folks, but Stephen Wright was a hell of a fucking mat wrestler and a hell of a worker. And he carried it off. It looked believable. And he could work with Tiger Mask, or he could work World of Sport style with a guy on the ground, whatever. He looked good. Alex Wright comes in, Das Wunderkind, but he's 19 years old. But how would you describe that gimmick they gave him? It was a cross between dancing and some kind of syntho pop.
The dancing was the issue. The music sucked, but you can get past that. It was the insistence on him going in there and doing a dance that ensured no man was going to cheer for him. And
yes,
remember the match that got Paul Roma fired in 95, I think. Was it 95? Yeah, it must have been 95. Him and Alex Wright. Roma's the heel, and Roma starts getting massive cheers for everything he did to Alex Wright, and then he starts playing into it, and he went overboard. It was awesome. But Alex Wright was talented, but he never stood a chance in America with that gimmick.
And I understand. I remember Painfully Thin also at that point in time. But yeah, the gimmick was death. It was worse than the break dancing son of Strongbow, Vincent Young, I thought.
See, that at least was of its time. I can understand why adults wouldn't like it, but if you were a kid, he's breakdancing. Breakdancing was just a few years ago. It kind of works.
Well, but I say
nobody was dancing like Alex Wright. There was no one doing that.
Well, no, but the thing is, it was worse than the breakdancing gimmick, because the breakdancing gimmick on an underneath guy that wasn't going to get over regardless, who gives a shit? But this horrible, worse gimmick given to a guy that might have been good with any other personality, that's worse.
Well,
not on the list.
Not on the list. He's a teenager. Jim, speaking of dancing, someone who danced in the ring and looked pretty good doing it. He was funky at one time, but this is before then. 29 in October, Too Cold Scorpio.
Wow. And, he was only a couple of years away from achieving his greatest fame as Flash Funk. Scorpio, during that period of time, they were using him and he was over. Correct?
94, they used him early on, and then he left, and he was an early guy to go to ECW in 94. Him and Sabu had some really good matches at the time.
That's it. He had been more dominant in WCW in 93 then, it's what I'm thinking, because he was a top guy there for a while.
93 was the year we got him and Barry Windham at the Clash of Champions. It was tremendous.
A lot of people don't, and he's got legal issues from what I understand these days with being a security guard that happened to stab somebody at a fucking convenience store.
Oh shit, I didn't know about that.
You didn't know? He was working as a security guard, and this guy came in and caused an issue, and he stabbed the guy a number of times. And of course, self-defense was involved, according to Scorpio, and the other guy has a different story. And they're going to talk about that in court coming up soon. But Scorpio, he for the size he had, he could do the flips off the top. He could do the athletic shit. And he had some personality to him, and he could talk a little bit. And so that's why I think, he's at least a question mark here for this time period. And I think he would have done better overall in his career had Vince again just said, okay, I've got this guy, Too Cold Scorpio. How could I use him instead of, okay, this guy, Charles Skaggs, is a wrestler. Let's come up with something for him, pal. Because Flash Funk it was just bleh. And that's when, Vince was the attitude era for Vince meant, well, let's do, even more funny, crazy things than I used to do. And, so they called Aunt Esther. Remember, I told you that story. Or called her agent. What was her name? Isabel Sanford? About whether she could do a skit on a pay-per-view with Flash Funk. And fortunately, she was too ill to participate.
All right, so on the question mark list, Too Cold Scorpio.
I think so.
I agree. Turning 23 in April, Axel Rotten.
Well, the better talent of the Rotten brothers by a long shot. Obviously not on the list because he was a nice guy that had issues and his drug problems got the better of him, etc. But he was, I think, for ECW and for the independent shows, he loved business. I met him a couple of times. He and Danny McDevitt and some of those guys in Baltimore ran Maryland Championship Wrestling at the start, but he had his problems kind of iggied him out of that too. It's not his fault he ended up with a, fucking gimmick brother like Ian Rotten. So that shouldn't be held against him, but he never really got there, did he?
He had talent. He would really break out and get noticed. I mean, they were on Global as a tag team, as a British brother tag team. And then they got over in ECW with the gimmick stuff, the Taipei death match, where they glued the glass to their hands. And then he went to the USWA. He was there in 95. And, he wasn't, again, I have a soft spot for 1995 USWA. I think it's kind of the last time it was really just a great wrestling television show week after week. And a lot of it was the people. It was the Smoky Mountain infusion. Billy Jack Haynes was unbelievable as a heel. Brandon Baxter was the most promising new manager in forever.
When he still had hair.
And Axel Rotten was on the babyface side there, and he was pretty good that year. So again, that's a year after this, but not on the list. Jim, I think we got a certainty here. Turning 29 in June, Cactus Jack.
Yeah, I think we go ahead and put a check mark down for Cactus in 1994 because he had come to everybody's national attention by 1989 with that first run on TBS. He'd already left and come back. Booking aside, he's only going to be more featured. He's going to do ECW. He's going to do all the stuff in Japan that got him noticed. Then he's going to go to the WWF and tear the place up. So, I mean, we don't need to go through his entire itinerary. His best years are ahead, and he had a pretty good time at that point.
In 1994, he starts the year in WCW. He's a over babyface. And then him and Max Payne and him and Kevin Sullivan have back-to-back wild tag team matches that you didn't see every day back then on pay-per-view with the Nasty Boys, Slamboree, and Spring Stampede. And then he left WCW, went to ECW and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So he had a busy 94, and he was a player. And this is kind of the beginning of the reinvention of Mick Foley. I mean, we didn't know him as Mick Foley. Only thing we knew him as is Cactus Jack back then as fans. So on the list.
On the list.
Jim, we're going to mention this next one, and I can understand the problem people would have, but we're talking about 1994, so we have to look at everything. Turning 27 in May, Chris Benoit.
I don't have one of the problems that people have with this, in that I don't feel that you should ever just overlook the existence of anybody. And or, we just can't talk about him. Well, no, just talk about him. If a guy did rotten shit, you can talk about him as well as if he did good shit. You can't just say, well, we don't mention him anymore, because then everybody forgets about the rotten shit that he did. With Benoit, there's also the extra element of it wasn't the same person. If ever a case can be made for extensive brain damage leading somebody to go fucking out of their mind, this would be it. And you're really, insanity is a defense that's been overused, but when you're talking about almost two different functioning people between 1994 and 2006, or whatever year that was, this was the guy that everybody loved. This was the most polite, reserved guy who was respectful and dedicated and worked harder than anybody and had a chip on his shoulder to prove that he was the best. And the other guy was a fucking nut and had delusions and was driven to do what he did by some type of, don't mean to air people's medical history, but it's the same as my cousin that I've mentioned has been in and out of a rehab center because he's got not only Alzheimer's, but issues to where he is convinced that people say or do things that they don't do or say. So I'm not in any way excusing what Chris Benoit did when his brain melted by saying that, no, the guy in 1994 was the guy that I just described. Having said that, he would certainly be a question mark, but just for the year 1994, he was way before he would make a real fucking splash in the wrestling business.
I would say that if we're evaluating 1994, he should be on the list. And let me just preface this by saying I've been pretty vocal about what a piece of shit I think Chris Benoit was. And I don't think he belongs in any wrestling Hall of Fame. But we're evaluating 1994. That's denying history to pretend that he didn't have that great year before, years before.
Yeah.
He was a monster.
Well, was 94 that great for him? I can't remember.
1994, he wins the Super J Cup, which was the biggest
well, he was a big deal in Japan. Okay.
Biggest junior heavyweight tournament they had ever done, and it was an amazing series of matches that he had on that card.
Well, I remembered 95, he was at loose ends, as they say, because Owen Hart had talked whoever, Pat Patterson, Vince himself, whoever, into giving Benoit a dark match and wanted to work with him. And I was managing Owen. So we had Benoit's first dark tryout match, and Owen bumped for him and I bumped for him, and we put him over as best we could. And Bruce came back on instructions from Vince, said, well, give him a deal. He can just work the Canadian shows. Like, well, he might be a special attraction there. I'm like, this fucking, So that's why it took another 5 years to get him in the WWF.
But 94 again, big in New Japan when it was still doing big business. ECW, AAA pay-per-view, he was on that show. At a minimum, I would say question mark if we're evaluating 94, but I'll say question mark. You know what? Because I still think Sean Waltman should be on the list, and he's on the question mark list. So if he is, I'm going to put Benoit there too.
We'll come back to that.
Jim turning 29 in July. Public Enemy's Johnny Grunge.
Yeah, I mean, all the boys liked him. I never spent that much time around him. I think I met him a time or two. But I don't see him being on a top 20 list. Paulie was able to get something out of a lot of guys that most everybody else couldn't get anything out of. But a lot of it had to do with the timing and the placement as well.
And this was the timing and the place, 94, the year Public Enemy really took off with ECW and became a cult favorite for those fans, which shockingly led to them going to WCW. It was kind of one of those things that seemed like it would be an ECW for life act, not someone's going to want this somewhere else.
But then when they went there and couldn't do what they did to get there, they didn't stay there.
All right, so not on our list here. Jim turning 27 in April, JT Smith.
I remember him. He was a nice kid, but he was most noted for, on one of the high-profile early ECW shows, doing some kind of dive off the top rope and landing smack dab straight on his head on a concrete floor and giving himself an egg the size of a cantaloupe. And that is really all I remember about poor JT Smith.
That, to me, from what I remember, was the kickoff moment for the "You fucked up" chants.
Yes, that's exactly right. That was the one.
And then they started playing into it where he was a klutz and he was doing, silly things, but not on our list for 1994.
But he worked for Joel Goodhart on some of those shows I was on up there in Philly before that. He was a local young man, but yeah, we'll forever be in the "You Fucked Up" Hall of Fame for starting that.
You have to wonder if maybe his concentration would have been better if he had been using ultra pouches. Maybe he'll have a couple of Cool Mint or Fresh Mint, whatever it is. They have lots of flavors, and the
wintergreen, the blue raz. He could stick some watermelon in there, and just any of these flavors would work.
That's my personal favorite, of course. And ultra pouches are something I use to help with editing, and we think the listeners may like them too, Jim.
Well, that's right, because folks, the thing is, you want to get away from bad habits and from things that do damage to you. Some of these pouches they got out there these days, they've got caffeine or they've got nicotine. You can get addicted to these substances and then you can get withdrawals. And then sometimes you'll just be shaking and sweating and a blob of protoplasm laying in the gutter, and people will come by and spit on you and kick you and pick your pockets and wipe their feet on you. Their dog will piss on you on the way by. Do you want to live a life like that where you're just laying around in a gutter being shit and pissed and kicked on? Or do you want to take... Well, no, nobody wants that.
No.
Only a real masochist would want that. Or do you want to take the high road?
Darby Allin.
Ladies and gentlemen, Darby Allin would like a thing like that, especially the pissing and the pooping upon. But if you want to take the high road, folks, stay away from the caffeine, stay away from the nicotine, but concentrate. You need to concentrate. You need to calm down. You need to have a steady flow state focus. You need to work on your memory and your mood balance. You need to be even goose fraba all the way through the day, all with zero nicotine and zero caffeine. And that's our friends at Ultra Pouches. You stick one of these bad boys in there, they are loaded. They are packed up with Infinity PX, which is a cleaner, smoother energy boost than caffeine. The famous L-theanine. I just take a big swig of L-theanine when I get up every morning because it's an amino acid that promotes calm, energy, and attentiveness. And also, if you use it undiluted, it takes spots out of sweaters.
Nope. Let's get away from that. You don't have to do that. Or
well, not in this. It's diluted here in these with the alpha GPC, which is a nootropic for enhanced mental processing. And then you got the vitamins, the B6, the B12, the balanced energy, the mood, all designed to sharpen your mind, folks. All designed to lift your energy without all the nicotine or the caffeine or the withdrawals or the Joneses or the shakes. If they lock you up for 72 hours on an involuntary hold, you're going to miss that caffeine and nicotine, but you won't have a problem missing the Ultra Pouches because they don't have all those nasty ingredients. And if you break out, then you can get back to them quicker. Just pop one in. If you go to the gym, a little extra push, or if you're sitting in front of your computer and you're thinking, my boss, I hate my boss, I hate my job, I want all these people to burst into flames. I can't wait until the day is over so I can go to my miserable home and be miserable. But you pop one of these in, and son of a gun, you are more aware of how miserable you are. You concentrate on it better, and you can think of a bunch more reasons of why you're miserable. That's what they'll do for you. And right now, as we've said, in the Cool Mint Wintergreen Tropical Blue Raz or Watermelon, it's the ultimate guilt-free pouch, delivering the instant focus and mental clarity. Zoom in, folks. Zoom in, tune in, turn on,
what is happening?
And drop out.
No, don't do any of those things, Dr. O'Leary. And of course, we're talking. Well, I don't even know how you're applying this here.
I'm trying to tell you.
What?
All you got to do is go to takeultra.com. That's what you need to zoom in on and tune in on and turn up and drop in. Just pop in to takeultra.com. And you're going to get 15% off with the promo code JCE. Just pop on in, 15% off, takeultra.com. The promo code is JCE. They're going to send you more pouches than a kangaroo has in their whole family. And then you can take that and put 6 of them in the side of your cheek, and the heat vision will allow you to bend
do that.
spoons.
They recommend 1, 2,
Just
or
remember
3
Uri
for seasoned
Geller.
pros. Don't remember Uri Geller. He was a fraud.
Uri Geller used these for all of his. No, he was this was how he was able to bend spoons, because he could concentrate his will magnetically because of the Take Ultra pouches. He was a big L-theanine fiend. A Welsh rarebit in the evenings and L-theanine every morning.
He was a con artist day in and day out, pretending he bent spoons and forks. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here is something that I personally enjoy, and we think you may as well. One more time, Jim, without any news of added features, what's that promo code and the link for the listeners?
Just pop in to takeultra.com. Use the promo code JCE for 15% off.
Ultra pouches. And now back to the list, the top 20 in their 20s in 1994. Jim turning 21 in December. Hack Myers.
I don't know that I ever met Hack Myers. I know that he was how would we phrase it? In the early ECW, he was one of the cult figures to the local following. Perhaps you can tell me more, but I don't know anything else about him.
Yeah, eventually they started calling him the Shah of ECW, which all began because he was this, kind of, scuzzy looking guy losing matches. And then all of a sudden, the fans there, to make themselves laugh, started saying Shah every time he did any offense. That's all Paul Heyman needed. That was the little bit of life that Paul Heyman needed to see or hear from that audience, and it went from there. All right, so not on our list for 94.
He was only 21 years old. He looked that scuzzy. And did he ever wrestle anymore after?
After ECW, I'm not sure. A lot of it may have been the haircut. But Jim, turning 21 in June, an interesting one here. Mikey Whipwreck. On the topic of Paul Heyman creations, Mikey Whipwreck.
If 1994 was the year they did all that stuff with him, I can't imagine a year he was more over. In ECW, they definitely created interest. Again, I'm not sure I met the fucking guy. Now, if he's out there listening, son of a bitch, I met you in 1997.
He always says nice things about you.
Oh, come on now. Don't make me feel bad. But, it was a gimmick. It was the loser gimmick. And he wasn't portrayed as like a losing streak. He was just a big loser, just a loser at everything. And they got that over.
They literally used the song Loser by Beck for unlicensed video use on ECW TV. But he was one of the guys that you would see on ECW losing. Because back then, in the early days of Paul Heyman's ECW, they would do the big show at the ECW arena. Maybe they would get 1,000 at the most, and who knows what it was at that point. But then usually like the next day or something, they would do another taping in the ECW arena and it would be almost empty. So you'd see a lot of these job guys there. There was another one, he was named after what? Dennis Whipwrecht. And then there was another one, Joel Hartgood. Like everyone had a name.
And Dennis Whipwreck was an independent promoter at the time up there that Paulie wanted to fuck with, so he named the big loser Mikey Whipwreck.
So Paulie and ICW in 1990 had the wrestling school dropout. And it was kind of working as much as you can for Mario Savoldi's 1990 ICW. And then Paul had a fight, went back to WCW. But he started doing that again in 94 in ECW with Chad Austin. And it was kind of abandoned and given to Mikey Whipwreck, and it worked a whole lot better. No disrespect to Chad, who I've always gotten along with, but he's certainly a character. He's certainly a character. But Mikey Whipwreck got that gimmick, and it worked, and it happened pretty quickly because whatever the reason was that Terry Funk pulled out, whether it was the NWA tournament with Shane Douglas throwing down the belt, or whatever it was, Terry Funk pulled out of a match where it was going to be him and Cactus Jack against maybe the Public Enemy. I don't even remember. Terry wasn't there, so who's Cactus Jack going to pick as his partner? He goes in the back, and he comes back out dragging Mikey Whipwreck, who knows he's a loser. Like, he knows I shouldn't be in this match. And they win the tag titles. And it worked. And I would say, at a minimum, I know it's crazy, I would say a question mark for 94 and serious consideration if we did this in 1995. And I know that's crazy because, you know, he wrestled in a t-shirt, he wasn't a big guy, but he was super over. And they kind of let the gimmick grow so that he develop the skills of a wrestler. He could have these competitive matches. And, you know, then he went to WCW and the party was over.
And there you go. Because it's all about placement and timing.
All right, so Mikey Whipwreck on the question mark list, 21 years old. Jim, 23 in September, Osamu Nishimura.
Help me.
NWA title tournament, Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Son of a gun, well, I was there. I guess I met him.
He lost in the first round, I believe.
He probably did. Bless his little pea-picking heart.
All right, not on your list for 94. I'll do these two together, although they should be considered separate for 94. Pitbull number 1, who turned 27 in March, and Pitbull number 2, who turned 27 in July. I say they should be considered separate because Pitbull number 2 was out with an injury for a lot of 94, if not all of it, or the majority
that was,
of
what was it? Gary Wolf and what was...
Anthony Durante.
And Anthony Durante. And it was Gary Wolf was number 2 because he got the neck injury, right?
Well, no, he was number 1, and number 2 was injured, and he was just the Pitbull in early Paul Heyman ECW. And then his longtime partner, they've been wrestling New Jersey Indies and stuff for years, came back, and they became the Pitbulls tag team at that point. And then the Gary Wolf neck injury, I want to say that was 96.
Ah. Well, I don't know what they were doing in 94, but I do remember because I was in Connecticut and was able to actually see ECW on television in 96 when the guy got a legitimate neck injury. They put a halo on him and they did an angle where they were out there jerking him around by his fucking halo. A legitimate halo.
And it got legitimate heat, believe it or not, amongst those fans, those cynical fans in ECW. It got heat.
Well, but anyway, otherwise, I am not well-versed on the Pitbull's career.
All right, so
a lot of ECW talent here.
Well, Jim turning 27 in October, a one-time Smoky Mountain talent, and I mean it, one time, I think.
One time.
The Tasmaniac.
Actually, it was one weekend because he
yeah.
came down for the whole weekend. The Tasmaniac wouldn't be on anybody's list, but whenever he becomes Taz, then we would start talking. But yeah, if anybody was a fan of Taz in his Taz Human Submission Machine days and saw the Tasmaniac that looked like he was an extra on Gilligan's Island, yeah, no, it didn't work. But I used him because it was, again, Kevin Sullivan said, hey, these guys are coming down from Jersey, and this kid, Pete Sinercha, the Tasmaniac, you got to take a look at him. So, but he wasn't there by 94, was he?
Probably not. He had a good little run going on in ECW. He tagged with Kevin in ECW, and then him and Sabu had some early matches that were pretty good. He was being used fairly well. I'd been watching him for years because he was on IWCCW TV, and one of the few good things on that show that got replayed a bunch was him and Surfer Ray Odyssey. So I'd been watching him, and I knew he could actually have good, fun matches. But he was not one of the top guys in ECW, and again, things would change in 95 going into 96, but I would agree not on the list for 94. Turning 23 in October, Stevie Richards.
Wow, that means he actually told me one time that he was at the Philly Civic Center when the Midnight Express beat Tully and Arn for the tag team titles, and that night,
that's 88,
was what convinced him he wanted to be a wrestler. And he would have been 17.
So it's your fault.
It's my fault. No. I always liked Stevie as a person, and I think he's a good worker. I think he got a spot in ECW where it was the comedy group, the Blue World Order, him and the T-shirts with the meanie and whatever else they were doing. And then when he finally got the chance to come to the WWF, it was always, again, in some kind of middle card funny gimmick, the censor group and the job squad, whatever the case. But Stevie himself was a good worker, always worked hard, and nice guy. So I can't put him on the list, but, you know, if there had been other places to go or work or whatever, he might have actually been a regular wrestler instead of always in the fucking fun group.
As far as a performer, I think you could argue that he deserves some thought for 95, which was kind of his breakout year as the Clueless Putz character, I guess we should say, to Raven, because Raven didn't start as Raven until, after this. He was still Scotty Flamingo or Johnny Polo or whatever he could use on the indies.
Yeah, he was Johnny Polo in, wasn't he, in New York?
That's right. And, he was at the end of 94 looking for something to do, and he became Raven at the beginning of 95. And that really is what put Stevie Richards on the map. So I would say not for 94, no. Also turning 23 in February, Jim, also from ECW, Tommy Dreamer.
Boy, howdy. If we have to analyze people by name going down the list, we come to Dreamer. Does it seem like he was ever 23 years old at this point? I mean, again, hate to knock him. He was over in ECW. This was a period of time where from 93 to 97-ish or so, 8, Paul could get guys over that would then go on to get jobs, and you would go, how the fuck were these guys ever stars for this guy? And I'm not trying to bury Dreamer, but if he hadn't started in ECW and gotten a name from that, Tommy didn't necessarily have a great physique or a tremendous promo or a over-the-top charismatic look. He just was dedicated enough to let all those heels in ECW beat the shit out of him for real with all kinds of objects for a couple years until the people loved him. But then unless you go back and repeat that process in every promotion that he goes to from that point on, when you just saw Tommy Dreamer show up and you hadn't seen him before, you're like, eh? Timing and placement. What do you say?
Heyman Magic.
You're the ECW expert.
Yeah, Heyman Magic. Another guy I saw in IWCCW who was like, oh my God, this guy's never going to go anywhere. Can't do a promo. Doesn't have a physique. It's just a kind of goody two-shoes babyface. And then Heyman beat the shit out of him to the point where the fans there started to respect him. And then Raven, the best thing that ever happened to him. And they got to do that ridiculous feud. I say ridiculous because if you really think about it, I think the storyline is they were friends at camp and they had a problem. And the ugly girl at camp was Beulah McGillicuddy, who they were flying in to be Raven's girlfriend on these shows. And then Tommy Dreamer would pile drive her, which stopped when he got her pregnant.
I didn't know that the pile driver was performed in that fashion.
Well, and then it turned out the pregnancy, I guess, was a hoax because she was a lesbian with Kimona Wanalea. And then it turned out they had a threesome going on. Again, this was Paul Heyman's genius booking of the fucking 90s. Actually, Scott Levy's, maybe.
Here's the thing. Russo wasn't just copying fucking Jerry Springer. He was trying to copy Heyman. Nobody else could pull bullshit like this off.
No, you're right. Well, again, not on the list.
Yeah.
Jim turning 20 in March. You would see him at the NWA tournament in November in Cherry Hill working for Dennis Carluzzo. Devon Storm.
Well, I'd already known Devon Storm and Ace Darling, a.k.a. Mike Moraldo, for a couple of years at that point because they had already started working for Dennis and were on some of his events that I was on. I'd managed them as a tag team by this point.
No,
he would.
No way.
I believe I had.
By 94?
I would later on.
Way.
Well, okay, maybe then I managed him in 96, 97 when I was up there.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you agree with me. I love Devon Storm as a guy. He would later on become Crowbar in WCW. Great kid. Ace Darling ended up actually going straight and getting a legitimate job and having a real life. Devon did too, and has wrestled in recent years just because he enjoys it for the fun of it. But he's got gainful employment. But I wouldn't put Devon on this list, especially in 1994. He was still opening up fucking Vine Grove, New Jersey.
Vine Grove, Vineland. I'm not sure if Vine Grove is a place, but
Vineland, Vine Grove. Vine, you want to do this to me, Brian?
Well, Jim, let's go to Texas. A star for an empty Sportatorium's Global Wrestling Federation, turning 28 in November. John Hawk, who would become Justin Hawk Bradshaw.
Hold on now. Big Johnny Hawk. Old John Hawk there, Big Johnny Hawk, would later on get an opportunity and become Justin Hawk Bradshaw. But then his real name is John Layfield. So later on, he would become John Bradshaw Layfield and then just JBL because everybody's fixated on initials. But in this case, you're right. He was a star in Texas for Global Wrestling, which is a universe that the stars could only burn so bright. But this was the year before, Brian, he almost got his big break. It would have been sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and waterfalls for him. Because guess what? He was booked in Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
December?
He was booked to start Christmas week in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. We closed up Thanksgiving. I'd been looking at his tapes and his pictures, and I didn't have anything for him to move from Texas to Tennessee. But finally, I said, yes, I got to get this guy. I see something in him. I told him, I said, just you start on Christmas, and that was about the middle of November, and we closed up Thanksgiving weekend. So we sent the same Christmas card back and forth to each other like 3 or 4 years in a row after that, where he had written, Merry Christmas, Mr. Cornette. Can't wait to start your territory. But then he got the spot up there, and then nobody understood Justin Hawk Bradshaw because there's so many of these metamorphoses of names. And the kids, instead of Hawk, well, no, it wasn't the kids. It was one day they printed it in a program like that, Justin Hank Bradshaw. So since to this day, I call him, when I see him, I call him, hey, Hank. It's Justin Hank Bradshaw.
Well, of course, then he would become a blackjack and a disciple. And there's a whole bunch of things happening.
A DOA, the Minister of Darkness.
How were you going to bring him into Smoky Mountain? As a babyface or a heel?
As a babyface.
Really? Huh.
Big Johnny Hawk from Texas. And see what happened, because that's what he was doing. Oh, you know, when you're trying to find somebody, you don't... I had seen him on tape, and I'd seen the pictures, and I'd talked to him, but until you get around a guy for 3 or 4 fucking days a week and see how the people are taken, see his matches or whatever. If we'd have gone another year and a half, it might have been like Brian Lee, where he started as a baby face, and then I could tell he had a personality, unlike Brian Lee, unfortunately. And he could talk, so I'll switch him heel and then let him fucking be himself. But he was only 20, how old was he? 20 fucking 8 years old, or gonna be, or whatever. So let's see what happens.
Well, Jim, if you were watching the GWF on ESPN at 4 p.m., Monday to Friday, you would have also seen this man turning 24 in June, Mo Adib, who would become Ahmed Johnson a year later.
Good night. You know, sometimes even veteran observers can be fooled by a guy that's got all kinds of physical aura and the look and the intensity, and you fool yourself into thinking, well, it's just because he's in a shitty independent outlaw promotion, and boy, if we took him here and put him in the big house, dressed him all up and taught him a few things and shined him up, well, boy, howdy, we'd have us just a big star. And then it don't work. He had all the tools and he had the look, and I can see why they tried it. And you know Vince's fascination and predilection for big muscle guys, but he went straight up and he came straight down.
On to Ron Simmons' liver or whatever. Wait, what was it? Was it his liver? Didn't he?
I think it was his liver.
Yeah.
Made his liver quiver and his spleen turn green.
All right. No Mo Adib. Jim, someone who in 1994 was a star in AAA during one of their hottest periods, as well as in New Japan under a mask, but Eddie Guerrero, who turned 27 in October.
Well, it wasn't 94, the year of the Worlds Collide pay-per-views and the AAA shows in Los Angeles.
That's right.
So he was on top of bigger houses than anybody in WCW was drawing that year in the United States. I mean, for what he was already doing and who he would become, it has to be a check mark, doesn't it?
I don't feel comfortable giving him a check mark. I feel comfortable giving him a question mark, because I think we'd have to evaluate his 94 versus a Jeff Jarrett.
Come on.
A Jeff Jarrett or a 1-2-3 Kid.
I mean, he's doing well in Japan. He's a star in Mexico. He's headlining the big shows in Los Angeles, and he's going to go on to become one of the great workers of modern times.
Well, let me ask you this then, before we finish that one. Art Barr, a.k.a. Love Machine in AAA. He would turn 28 in October. He was the partner of Eddie Guerrero in that big match, the mask versus hair match, when Worlds Collide. One of the most amazing matches ever, and then he would die. I say amazing matches ever just because, again, time and place and an amazing job of commentary by Mike Tenay and Chris Cruz and the right audience, and just tremendous. And he would die days later. And of course, he had a pretty sordid past But do you consider them together, or do you consider them separate?
I think you have to consider them separate because the similarity they had was that they were tag partners at the time. They were one of the best heel tag teams in the business at that time. And they were on top of those AAA shows and etc. But even though Art Barr was good, he was not as good as Eddie was or would become in the ring. And he hadn't been in the business at a high level quite as long, nor would he, as you just said, go anywhere after that point. If you're just looking at 1994, maybe, but if you're looking at the totality of the two guys standing side by side, Eddie already was the one that people knew and would go on to become one of the biggest stars in the business. And Art Barr fucked up a couple things in his personal life and then fucked up big time.
You see, I think 95, Eddie's a clear-cut, even though he's getting to the end of his 20s, a clear-cut guy, because that's the year he blows up on his own in ECW. Him and Dean Malenko have those series of matches, gets signed to WCW. He's now on a national stage for what is being used fairly well as a junior heavyweight division. So that's kind of where everyone notices him. 94... I don't know. And again, Art Barr, that was Art Barr's year if there ever was going to be a year, but you have to overlook the fact that he was wrestling in Mexico because he had to flee the United States because he couldn't get booked because he raped a girl. So, I mean, there's that dynamic too. So what are we doing about Eddie?
I'll leave it at a question mark if you say so.
All right.
Until we go back over this.
And what are we doing about Art?
Question mark. We'll come back to it.
Art Barr, question mark. And he also was this. Jim, our final name today.
Nobody's named Art anymore, except the guy hanging on the wall.
Jim, our final name today, and we'll pick up this list next week. There's still a ways to go. But someone who would be working for you throughout 1994, turning 22 in March, Chris Candido.
And see, now it's got to be a hometown decision. If I say, oh, he deserves a check or a question or whatever, because he was working for me, but one of the top young guys that had burst on the scene because now he's on regular television. People are seeing him at only 22. He's in Smoky Mountain. His promos were coming along. His work was tremendous. Everybody's always telling how exciting he was to watch, even at that point. And, the next few years, he would have more high-profile spots, but really only in ECW would he get a chance to do what he could do. I think he's a question mark, but not a sure thing. But he's not Hack Myers either, right?
I wouldn't have a problem if you had said, oh, of course he's on the list. I got to see him all the time. I booked him. He was really good. He's 22. I mean, that's incredible. He was really good. I got to see him work house shows for Smoky Mountain. Every night he was really good. It was kind of the year that got him sold to WWE.
Yeah.
He was in big matches, Night of Legends, the tag title match with Ricky Gibson and Tammy at ringside.
But all of these guys that were coming in,
All
not
Japan
only the
tour.
WWF guys.
He got his All Japan tour that year.
The Funks were still booking guys for Baba. And so he got to work where the Funks could see him when they came in. And the WWF guys had seen him. And just names that had seen him that would come in. It was sort of like in the old days when Bobby Eaton was in Tennessee, and every once in a while, some recognized star would come to work for Nick and look at Bobby Eaton and go, what the fuck are you doing here? But, so yeah, but I don't want to be the one to say it because I don't want people to think I'm playing favorites.
If you want, we'll put him on the question mark list and give him a serious evaluation at the end, but I don't think it's outrageous. Again, we're talking someone day in and day out, younger than everyone on the list, 22, working a territory. You know, Barberville alone, I think we have to consider him.
He was the king of Barberville.
That's where we're going to end up today, but here's where we are. So far on our agreed final list for wrestlers, top 20 wrestlers in their 20s in 94, Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Yokozuna, Dustin Rhodes, Lord Steven Regal, and Cactus Jack. That's a murderer's row. Question mark list.
And we're not, are we halfway through, by the way, of these names?
Oh, I think we are of the 20s, yes. And here are the names we're going to have to evaluate, the question marks. 1, 2, 3 Kid, Fatu, Jeff Jarrett, Booker T, Too Cold Scorpio, Chris Benoit, Mikey Whipwreck, Eddie Guerrero, Art Barr, and Chris Candido. And there it is for today. Jim, 2 quick questions before we wrap things up. Again, next week, a lot of the things we've been promising the last couple of weeks will be next week. Plus SummerSlam. Just going to be a joyous time.
A joyous time.
Here's a question that was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Zeb in Kannapolis, North Carolina. Have you heard of Kannapolis?
Yeah, Kannapolis is very... Now they'd consider it suburban Charlotte, probably, but it's very close.
I've watched all 3 seasons of WWE Unreal on Netflix, and Michael Hayes is always giving this weird fist bump. Is that a recent habit? Or did he do that back when you worked with him? Do you have any idea why he does it that way? It caught my eye, and I have been wondering about it ever since.
That is the old Freebird Nabe. I don't know how it started, but the Freebirds, Hayes, Gordy, and Roberts, when they wouldn't come in and shake hands with guys at Nabe. And it's not a fist bump, it's a knuckle bump. They curl the fingers under, but you're bumping like your middle knuckles with the other guy. Nabe. Bobby Eaton started doing it because he used to ride with the Birds in Georgia. It was a thing that you just did. I can't explain it, but Nabe.
You know, on Unreal, at one point, Michael Hayes was just driving around in a golf cart. You know, I'm not saying send him to like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy or something, but like, what the fuck why? Just why?
And even though the fashion choices, the colors and the silks and the satins and the hats and the feathers and everything, they could at least be tailored to fit, right?
I've seen him dressed like head to toe in pink on multiple occasions. I don't know what's going on. His facial hair, I feel like someone needs to intervene. I feel like someone needs to intervene.
The sleeves of the jacket, when he's hanging his arms down, the middle finger barely peeks out.
It's like he got it from the Andre estate.
I don't know, because Michael Hayes dressed like Ronnie Van Zant when I knew him, and then they got a little flamboyant on that late 80s run, but suddenly he's super fly.
You know, if you don't have to work with him, like you could just be a fan, there's nothing funnier than Hayes and Garvin coming out with glitter all over them. So, pointing at each other. Well, there it is, Michael Hayes and his fist bump. We hope we answered your question, Zeb. Jim, one more question here. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Tiaman in County Tyrone, Northern Ireland. Hi, Jim. Do you remember any...
Hi, Tiaman Square.
I don't think that's it. Do you have anything... Do you know anything? Let me start this over completely.
I don't know anything.
Jim.
Don't know much about history.
Do you remember anything about your cancer?
No. Completely blank.
Come on now.
Blank.
Do you remember anything? Do you remember anything about your canceled TNA action figure? Were you ever involved in any discussions regarding the action figure deal? Or do you know any stories about TNA dealing with either Jakks Pacific or Marvel Toys? There were almost 100 TNA figures and playsets that were announced, but canceled, and never came to retail. Do you know any stories or reasons behind why they are canceled? Jim's figure was supposed to be in the Legends of the Ring series. That included others like Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Scott Steiner, and Andre the Giant, all of which were also canceled. Do you remember any discussions about TNA intending to sell Andre's merchandise?
Well, I don't know about Andre. It wasn't my week to watch him, but they canceled the TNA figures, as I recall, because the previous line didn't fucking sell. They couldn't give the son bitches away. And is Jack's Pacific still in business? Because they had, I believe this was the time period, they had signed me to a contract for that action figure and paid me in advance. Not paid me in advance, paid me an advance against future royalties. And then they didn't make it. And as I said, I remember it seemed like they canceled the whole goddamn thing. It wasn't just personal against me because the previous shit didn't sell. But they renewed me and sent me another check for like the next couple of years so that they would continue to have the rights and never made dick. And then that when it folded up or the agreement ran out, that's about the same amount of time I started, or same era of time I started talking to Figures Toy and actually did figures. So it was the same deal as I was at a TV taping one time for TNA in Orlando, and they said, "Oh, we've got to do motion capture on you for the video game coming out. How are you going to do?" "Oh, they put a cap on you and they put these sensors on you and they shoot you from all sides or whatever." And that didn't come out either. None of this shit came out.
You did that? You put the cap on and ran around?
I didn't run around. They were shooting me and standing me there. And maybe that was for the action figure. I don't know. But the point is, I stayed over. I was supposed to leave at 6 o'clock the next morning to drive home. And I went back over to the impact zone, stayed till almost noon in Orlando, couldn't get home till the next fucking day to have this shit done, and they never made anything. But that was TNA. If you didn't get in the first fucking line of whatever somebody was putting out, you were fucked because nobody was going to buy that shit, and they'd cancel the rest of it. So that's what I remember about that.
Have you seen the image of it, like the prototype that's gone around?
No, I didn't know any of that still existed.
It still exists, and yeah, it's still out there.
They never showed it to me at the time, I don't think, because I made it plain when I was standing there that I could have been 200 miles north by that point, so please hurry the fuck up. Because I knew it wasn't going to be any amount of money. I worked for TNA for 3 years, was on their television and their pay-per-views, et cetera, and I would get checks, quarterly royalty checks for like $17 fucking dollars. So I wasn't there for the fucking royalties.
Well, we're not here for the duration. With that, the drive-thru has closed.
Yes. Fling a fling a fling.
Come on, don't talk over these wonderful tunes that are being played for.
We're not here for a good time. We're here for a long time. That's what we.
Well, of course, we'll be back next week here on the show, the big SummerSlam review, and of course, another big week on the Jim Cornette Experience, Dark Side of the Ring, and much more, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, you can go through the archive, patreon.com/Cornette. $5 a month gets you access to the archive going back to 2013. Patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Go and subscribe today. Just search for Jim Cornette. It'll come right up. Full episodes, clips of the episodes, omnibus collections, George Livinitis artwork, and much more. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. What's going on, Jim?
Fascinating merchandise. Wasn't that what it was? Fascinating merchandise on sale now at JimCornette.com. Click on it and read about it and then pay for it, and then we'll send it to you. JimCornette.com.
At JimCornette.com. The drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen P. New, 877-50-STEVE. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until the experience in a few days, and next week back here on the Drive Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!